Good evening, everybody. Welcome into Hoopsville. Yeah, we're on the air, and we hope we're going to stay on the air tonight. I'm your host, Dave McHugh. Welcome in, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Thanks for dealing with us last week in our debacle, as it were, in the show. We tried our best. It didn't work out. It is what it is. I'm realizing we forgot to include a light in our studio setup from last season that I had taken down for other reasons. I got to put it back up because it's noticing a little dark in some areas. Anyway, welcome in. I'm your host, Dave McHugh. Coming to you live from the Hoopsville studios, thanks to D3Hoops.com. We also have other partners to thank in the near future as we solidify some partnerships and sponsorships and advertising. If you are one of those individuals who would like to advertise on our show, please do not hesitate to contact us. We would love to hear from you and find a way to make that happen, as it were. We are simulcasting on YouTube and Facebook tonight. Facebook.com/Hoopsville, YouTube.com/D3Hoopsville. Information sitting on the bottom of your screen. Also, podcasts listeners, you're probably wondering what happened to the first one. It has now been posted in its truncated version. This will be the first full show, but show number 2 of the year. But we're going to get to that. Again, podcast 1, they may even be delayed off of this one, to be completely blunt. But we're going to get those up and running. If you listen to the podcast right now, thank you for tuning in. We certainly appreciate it. We know not everybody can listen to us live, and we appreciate when you can tune in. So there you go. If you got questions for us, you can always email us, hoopsville at d3sports.com. That's hoopsville at d3sports.com. You can also... let's see. Join us on X/Twitter at D3Hoopsville. You can also join us using the hashtag Hoopsville. Facebook.com/Hoopsville. We've got that up and running. Reminds me, I probably need to get the chat section of it up and running as well. So I'll try and call, or at least like the messenger side, I'll try and call that up here in a short bit as well. And, let's see, what else have we got? We're on Threads, believe it or not, threads.com or threads.net/D3Hoops. So again, it's all at the bottom of your screen. Of course, we're live streaming on Team One Sports on Android TV, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, Roku TV. We're also on, like we said, the simulcast on YouTube and on Facebook. Those are streaming and up and running. We appreciate everybody who joins in there because we know that can be an option for many of you. And we appreciate it. Last week's, we don't know what really ultimately happened last week and why things did not work. What we do know is how to fix it. And after doing a lot of digging into updates and information and whatever you have it, we were able to discover that there's an integration between our software and Zoom, which we use. And those are now communicating with each other. Tonight, we will have one live interview. The others are pre-recorded for multiple reasons, but it'll be a good test of our live turnaround. The new integration's great. It just takes us a little while to put it together when it's live, but we're looking forward to giving that a test run here. I know from pre-taping earlier today that these things work, and as a result, you're also going to get a little bit of a new look on the show. So let's talk about our guests, shall we? Because that's semi-important, I guess, in the grand scheme of things. First and foremost, we're going to start with a topic that Ryan Scott wrote about today on D3Hoops.com. He writes an article about grads transfers making their way to the UAA. He talks about a lot of things. Case Western Reserve is a great example of this. We went in a different direction, not a different direction, I shouldn't say it that way, but we are going to hear from NYU women's side of things. Because I think it's kind of interesting because, Natalie Bruns and that squad certainly did well last year, losing in the quarterfinals to eventual champs Transylvania women's basketball. And guess what we found in the preseason? They had gotten 2 All-American transfers, Megan Bauman and Morgan Morrison. So we're going to talk to the trio of them about the idea of transfers, the COVID year, and coming into a big top-notch program and all of that. So that is going to be the conversation we have with them. So that's coming up. That's going to be our live interview. Really looking forward to that. I want to thank in advance Jeffrey Bernstein, Meg Barber, and I know I'm forgetting one other individual. I'll get that name later, for their help with putting that together. It was a little bit of time putting that all together. So certainly appreciate everybody doing that. So our article is to complement what Ryan has. So I've read a bit of Ryan's article, but I haven't read the whole thing. Certainly worth it. It's on d3hoops.com. We'll link to it on D3 Hoopsville's webpage a little bit later as well. Then we'll pivot and talk to Julie Folks, the head coach of Transylvania, who we'd not had a chance to talk to last week. She was on standby very kindly, waiting for us to figure out our gremlins. She came on. We talked to her earlier today. We talked to her about the championship. We talk about the offseason. We talk about going into this season and already a huge game that they had against DePaul. So we'll talk to Julie Folks coming up. Then we're going to actually hear from John Krikorian again. For anybody who missed it because they gave up on our broadcast or whatever last week, which was certainly understandable, we will talk to John, or you'll hear from John and what he had to say last week on the show. Reminder, it was last week's interview. So, for example, they played against Randolph-Macon, which we talk about in the interview. They beat Randolph-Macon. We aren't talking about that game, but you'll at least get to hear from John once again. And then we're going to hear from Dave Hixon. We now call him Hall of Famer Dave Hixon. He will join us to talk about being inducted into the Naismith Hall of Fame. We talk about what that could mean for Division III coaches, both men and women in the future. And we'll talk, heck, there could be some players, arguably, that deserve that honor as well. And then we'll also talk to him about what he's seen in basketball this season so far. We asked him some questions about Amherst men's basketball, his former program, and his coaching roots, including Aaron Toomey. We talked to all of him about that. Great to have him on the show. That's all coming up. Just a heads up, last week we also had Caleb Kimbrough and Jenna Cosgrove lined up to be on the show from Hampden-Sydney and Rhode Island College. Due to logistics and scheduling and all of that, could not get them on tonight's show, understandably. So we will have them on already scheduled next Monday's show, the 27th of November. We will bring them back. So we'll hear from Caleb Kimbrough and Jenna Cosgrove next Monday after Thanksgiving. Hear from them, plus some other guests that we've got ready to go for that. A reminder, obviously we're not going to be on Thanksgiving. We'll be on next Monday, and then the Thursday following, normally we try and be on Thursday shows, but the Thursday following, we are going to be tied up with men's and women's soccer down in Salem, Virginia. It's just too much of a lift to try and do a show on Thursday, whether we do it here and then head down for soccer for us Friday, because I'm calling the men's games. But I'd like to see the women's games as well, but I also don't want the pressure. It's a long story. So we're not going to do a show next Thursday. We will start the Monday-Thursday run starting on December 6th. The 6th will be the Monday show. I believe I have that date right. I confirm that on my calendar because it's always better to do it that way. December 4th will be our traditional Monday show. Then December 7th will be our first Thursday show of the season. We will go on the air until on that schedule for 3 weeks. The Thursday, the 21st right now is scheduled to be our final show before the holidays. Outside chance that show doesn't get... That one's always in the air because it depends on how much content is really happening out there. If we don't have enough content or anything to talk about because of holiday breaks and exams and all that, then who knows. But then we'll come back in January and we'll go Monday through Thursday through the rest of the season. So there you go on the schedule. Again, if you've got questions for us, you can tweet us at D3Hoopsville, hashtag Hoopsville, or X us, post us, whatever it's called. You can also try and message us through there. And then you can email us, Hoopsville at d3sports.com. We can get those emails as well. And you can, lots of ways. It's all sitting there at the bottom of your screen, really, if you're watching. Of course, if you're on podcasts, I realize you may not be able to do that. Facebook.com/Hoopsville, YouTube.com/D3Hoopsville. You can chat with us there as well, and lots of other abilities. So there you go. Let's take a look at some of the stuff that happened in the last week, in the top 25s especially. Christopher Newport was 1-2 when we talked to John Krikorian last week. They are now 3-2. Big wins over 14th ranked Randolph-Macon, 64-54, and 12th ranked Hopkins, 75-73. A nail biter there against Hopkins. Hopkins is a good team. Obviously, we'll talk more about them down the road. Whitewater is off to a good start at 3-0 so far this season, with wins over Gustavus Adolphus, St. Mary's of Minnesota, and Carroll. They've got Augustana and Ripon coming up. Ripon had a big win over Carthage, we'll talk about as the season progresses. I know that'll be in the conversation. John Carroll's off to a 4-0 start. They did win against Penn State Harrisburg by 20. That was a team I know Ryan Scott has had his eyes on, that Harrisburg squad. That's a pretty commanding win by John Carroll. Also, though, only a 10-point win over Susquehanna. That caught my interest because I'm curious what Frank Marcinek's got going on at Susquehanna to be within 10 games of John Carroll, other than just maybe playing right after the Harrisburg game. Keene State, 2-1. Beat Western New England handily, then lost to Stockton by 4, but then handled UW Whitewater rather easily. They've got Connecticut College and MIT coming up, which is, to say the least, going to be interesting. I'm curious about the MIT team this season. I really am. Mount Union's off to a 4-0 start. Had a squeak by Gwinnett Mercy in overtime. Got a win over Chatham. Got an overtime win over Scranton. I know I was keeping track of that one because it certainly had my eye. I'm curious what's going on at Scranton, if they're going toe-to-toe with Keene State, or does that say more about Keene State? Pitt Greensburg was an easy win. They've got Worcester coming up. Oswego's off to a 3-0 start. SUNY IT coming up. RIP Clarkson with wins. Nazareth coming up. The Nazareth game's one I'm going to have my eye on. Williams got a loss out of the gate to WPI, who has absolutely been playing phenomenal, but then beat Dickinson, Vassar, and Worcester State along with St. Lawrence, though that one went to overtime. Williams feels a little high to me. New poll will come out next week. Hamden Sydney's off to that 4-0 start, which is good. NYU is off to a 3-1 start. They have a loss to Swarthmore. Last-second buzzer beater. Calvin's off to a 3-0 start. Swarthmore's 3-1. They lost to Wash U out of the gate. Hopkins is 2-3. They're ranked 12th. I didn't have them that high, though 2-3 is a little surprising. Listen, they're learning stuff new under Ryan Kane, so I'm not blown away. But listen, here's who they played, okay? They lost to NYU by 4. They lost to Wash U by 6. They beat York in overtime. I think it was double overtime, 64-62. And York, Pennsylvania, is going to be Matt Hunter's got a team there that's going to be competitive, very competitive. Then they lost to number 1 Christopher Newport by 2, and they'll take on Gettysburg, who I'll see that game coming up next Tuesday. That's not a bad start for Johns Hopkins. That is a tough run to start the season, especially under a new head coach. Case Western's off to a 4-0 start. Randolph-Macon's off to a 1-2 start, losing to Virginia Wesleyan in a low-scoring affair, and then losing to Christopher Newport. They beat Pfeiffer easily before that. Otherwise, the only thing that East Texas Baptist 0-2, I wasn't even voting for him, I don't believe. North Park's 2-2. Middlebury's 0-4. And that really stuns me. Lost to St. Joseph's. Okay, understand that one. Lost to Clark. Okay, maybe, because Clark might be a sleeper. Lost to Redlands, and it wasn't close, 83-58. Redlands is a team we got to keep an eye on. And then lost to Wittenberg by 3. Middlebury, you're going to hear Dave Hixon talk more about it later in the show about the Panthers, but that surprises me. So receiving votes category, by the way, WPI is 5-0. We mentioned that earlier, off to a tremendous start. Redlands is 4-0. Trinity, Connecticut's 5-0. There's some really interesting results on the men's side. Women's side, a little bit more chalk, as it were. Tufts did lose to Rhode Island College out of the gate. That's why we're going to talk to Jenna Cosgrove next week. Ohio Northern is 1-1. They lost to Wittenberg but beat Anderson. By the way, Hope had a nail biter to start the season. They're 4-0, but they had a nail-biting game. Oh, who was that against? I'm blanking on who it was. Was it? No, it wasn't Hope. It was someone else. I'll have to get back to that. I apologize, folks. Transylvania Men is who I was thinking about. Sorry. I had my Bryans flipped in my head. DeSales is 1-1, lost to Muhlenberg in a low-scoring affair, 44-41, then beat St. Elizabeth, 94-53. Babson's 2-1 under a new head coach. Receiving votes category, Emory lost to start the season to Christopher Newport. But in the women's side, there aren't a lot of huge sudden surprises, in my opinion. But that's usual, part of the that's how it goes, right? We always expect that. So we'll keep an eye on how that all plays out, and we'll certainly answer any of your questions. If you happen to have any, send them our way. We'll try and do our best. Before we get on to the rest of the show, I did want to take a moment to send our thoughts and our heart to the Wisconsin Platteville community. Dr. Christina Navarro-Krupka, the athletics director at UW-Platteville, died suddenly over the weekend. She had been pregnant. According to their statement, we are deeply saddened and heartbroken by the passing of Dr. Christina Navarro-Krupka this weekend. The quote from the chancellor, Dr. Tammy K. Evantovich, I hope I say that right, or Ivatovich, athletics director, assistant chancellor, unexpected passing during pregnancy fills us with both shock and sadness. She was an enthusiastic champion of the entire Wisconsin Platteville, especially our student athletes, coaches, and athletic staff. I offer my condolences to her husband, Nick, her family, her friends, and many, many people she impacted during her time at Wisconsin Platteville. She will be greatly missed. That's all we know. Don't know if it was giving birth or it was a complication of the pregnancy. But unfortunate news out of Wisconsin Platteville, and our hearts and thoughts are with them. Wonderful woman. I know she was really highly regarded at Platteville. I had only had a brief occasions to interact with her, but I know she was very well respected. She was 39 or 40. And so we can only imagine how heartbreaking that is for everyone. So with that, we dedicate our show to her tonight. And in the meantime, we will take a break. When we come back, we will talk to some of the women's basketball players at New York University about transfers and COVID years and joining a team and the dynamics of all of that. You are listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com from the Hoopsville studios outside of Baltimore, Maryland. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We're off to at least a decent start tonight. Looking forward to our first segment coming up. The National Association of Basketball Coaches is the nation's premier professional development and advocacy organization for basketball coaches at every level. The NABC strives to serve as the voice for coaches on national issues while advancing the core value of leadership, service, advocacy, education, and inclusion. To learn more about the NABC and to become a member, visit NABC.com and follow the NABC on social media at NABC1927. That's NABC.com or NABC1927 on social media.
These are your teams, your players, your community of fans. This is where they play, where they practice, where you cheer. At every meet, every event, every game. Your community is passionate, dedicated, supportive. You know the tension of a close game and the thrill of the win. So while you're cheering, keep an eye out for anything out of the ordinary. If you see something suspicious, say something to local authorities.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's nearly 850 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over 2 decades. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're D3Hoops.com at www.D3Hoops.com.
I used to never really talk, ever. I was afraid if I said something wrong, everyone would laugh at me. But then I started to play golf with Special Olympics. It helped me to find my voice. And now everyone else is speechless.
It's on us to stop sexual assault.
In any way that we can.
To get a friend home safe.
To never blame the victim.
It's on us.
To stand up.
To make our community safe for all. It's on us.
It's on us to look out for each other at parties.
It's on us.
To be more than just a bystander.
To step up and say something.
It's on us, all of us.
To stop sexual assault. Learn how and take the pledge at itsonus.org.
Coach of the Year, Administrator of the Year, All-America Team,
Wade Trophy. The WBCA doesn't just honor coaches, but players, administrators, and much more. The WBCA strives to honor those who have contributed to the advancement of women's basketball. Celebrate the present, honor the past, look to the future.
Football has taught me a lot throughout my life. It's definitely had a huge imprint on who I am as a person. Competing at a Division III level created that opportunity for me to go to college. Not only was I the first one in my family to graduate college, but I was really the first one to even go. Being the first one, I'm breaking that cycle, and now that I've graduated, I'm not sure what's the next step, but I know I have a lot of doors open. And a lot of those are open because I played football and ran track here at Otterbein.
Responsibility is being accountable for your words and actions, first and foremost. It also is an obligation to be a positive influence in the communities around you. Being in a D3 program, you're going to have lots of different opportunities. You're not just an athlete, you're also involved in student life. Your academics are extremely important. We give a lot of our student athletes responsibilities right from the start by giving them leadership opportunities, by having them engage in the community, be a positive influence. That's being a responsible person.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's nearly 850 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over 2 decades. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're D3Hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com. The National Association of Basketball Coaches is the nation's premier professional development and advocacy organization for basketball coaches at every level. The NABC strives to serve as the voice for coaches on national issues while advancing the core value of leadership, service, advocacy, education, and inclusion. To learn more about the NABC and to become a member, visit NABC.com and follow the NABC on social media at NABC1927. That's NABC.com or NABC1927 on social media. And welcome back to Hoopsville. A little bit of an extended break there as we figured out our newfangled setup. Welcome in. Hope you're enjoying the show. We're rolling here on our second official show. We're calling this season debut part 2 because the last one was kind of deux. Yeah, I haven't had enough caffeine today, apparently. If you got questions for us, tweet us at D3Hoops or hashtag Hoopsville or X us, post us. I don't know what you call that anymore. Facebook, we're on there, facebook.com/Hoopsville. We're also on YouTube, simulcasting, youtube.com/Hoopsville. And our first great test of the season after the debacle that was last year was figuring out how we can do our interviews a little bit more seamlessly. Well, we figured it out. So I'm happy to talk about this topic because something that has kind of changed with the transfer portals and transfer allowances and all of that is we're starting to see, I don't want to say starting to see, we certainly have seen a little bit in a lot of other sports, transfers, especially from Division I and elsewhere, coming to Division III to kind of get their last hurrah, as it were. Johns Hopkins women's soccer last year won the national title with a bunch of Division I transfers. But it doesn't work for everybody. They tried to rekindle it this year. They lost in the second round of the NCAA tournament. Their men's soccer team had high expectations of doing the same thing. Did not have a great year. There are other programs. Catholic soccer tried something similar. There are others haven't had a lot of success. It feels like women's sports has it a little bit more successful. And now we're kind of seeing it with the extra COVID year. It's blossoming. Case Western Reserve has done this on the men's side. It's gotten some attention. North Park has been doing this through the transfer portal. But what jumped out at us in this offseason was what NYU was able to do. 2 All-Americans transferred to a program that was already going to be a favorite to be in the national title hopes. But instead of just talking about NYU, I kind of wanted to talk about how does this develop? And so joining us on the Hoopsville hotline
is a trio of guests tonight. We have Megan Bauman, Morgan Morrison, and Natalie Bruns. Bruns, to answer the trivia question, is the lone returning student athlete at NYU. The rest, Megan and Morgan, transferred in. Ladies, first and foremost, thank you for taking the time to join us. I really appreciate it, especially I am assuming you three have very busy academic lives at NYU.
Yes, for sure. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. All right, I want to start. Natalie, we'll talk about the team and the dynamics in a minute, but I want to start with Megan and Morgan. Quickly remind everybody about where you came from for starters and what your college experience had been so far. Megan, we'll start with you. Remind everyone where you came from and what you had kind of went just last year alone, what your experience in basketball had been.
Yeah, for sure. I came from Babson, where we made it to the Elite Eight last year, and we made it to the conference championship the past 2 years. Lost to Morgan, actually, Smith, in the New Mac championship game. So.
Yeah. Tough loss to Morgan. I understand. Speaking of Morgan, I know you went a little bit better than Megan, so we won't let you rub it in too much, but remind everybody where you kind of walked yourself from.
Yeah, I came from Smith College. We won 3 New Mac championships while I was there, and we made it to the Sweet 16 2 years and the Final Four last year.
Very impressive Final Four, we may add. And then, of course, Natalie is the NYU grad, or not grad. She's a senior now. She's the underclassman of the group. And Natalie and Morgan have something in common, right? Both of you ran into a team called Transylvania.
Sadly.
Have you commiserated about that, by the way?
What'd you say?
Have you commiserated about that yet?
Most definitely. I think that was one of the first bonding points that we had with each other.
So good news for you. I have Julie Folks from Transylvania coming on the show next. So you can stick around and really enjoy the segment, I'm sure. Let me go back to Megan. Megan, just give me an evolution here. Were you always, when the season was wrapping up, intending to jump and go to another school or even stick around if there was a grad option there? I don't know the actual answer to that at your old institution. Or were you not sure what you were going to do before deciding to transfer and do a grad year?
Yeah, so I knew I wanted to play basketball for another year. I just love the game so much and wanted to use that extra year, but the academic piece has always been the most important part to me. Coming from Babson, I wanted to go to a school that was of equal or higher caliber academics, and at the D3 level, wanted to make sure that it was also a top basketball school. So NYU stuck out immediately. The program has a reputation of making it far in the tournament every year, led by Coach Barber, but also the top academic programs, and specifically for me, the sports business program that they offered.
Yeah, I'll be honest. Sports business. I work in that world outside of Division III, and I find it fascinating that there's majors now to kind of help get into that. So that's a great idea. So you were intending to transfer it to do a grad year anyway, but were you really planning to play?
Yes. Yeah. I was
Okay.
always planning to play. Yep.
Now, was it always Division III? Because if I know your information correctly, you didn't jump into the portal necessarily.
I was in the portal.
Okay.
I was looking at some low D1s, but again, with that academic piece, making sure that the academics were up to the standard that I wanted to stay at.
It's almost like you're a Division III student athlete, and you understand the dynamics of the academic side of that. Morgan, on your side of things, where were you? Where were you as the season was letting up? Where was your mentality on what you would or wouldn't do moving forward?
Yeah, it's very similar to Megan. As my season progressed, I realized that I did want to continue and use my final year. I just loved it so much and wanted to get 4 years instead of 3. And like Megan, I was looking for a school that could give me a great basketball experience, just like Smith had did, and also very high academics that would help me further my career which would be their electrical engineering program at NYU.
Oh, just electrical engineering. Nothing shabby there at all. Morgan and Megan, correct me if I'm wrong. Were there avenues at your institutions to, because I can't keep track of all these, were there avenues at your institutions to be able to stay and do the year there, or was there no grad options whatsoever ever to go, Morgan, at Smith?
At Smith, there wasn't really a official grad program for my major, so it wasn't the greatest option.
That makes some sense.
Yeah.
So you could have gone grad, but you were basically had to do something completely outside of what you've been doing for 4 years of academics.
Yeah, and I really just wanted to be able to come out with a master's too, which NYU was able to provide me.
Sure. Megan, your institution, did you have a path forward there?
Similarly to Morgan, there's 3 grad programs at Babson, none of which were in the major that I was interested in seeking out, and saw like professional opportunity from gaining that master's degree.
And that's the key here, and I want other people to understand out there. There's schools like Transylvania, there are no grad programs. There are other institutions like yours that don't have the grad programs necessarily in the major you want, and to stick around, you'd basically have to go into a whole nother genre, as it were, and that may not help you unless it's something that complements what you want. Natalie, on your side of things, do you guys traditionally, from your experience, get a lot of transfers that look to an NYU to continue playing? Or was something that Megan and Morgan are going through somewhat a little bit new?
I mean, with the COVID year, it's definitely been newer. It's been within this past 2 or 3 years that we've seen transfers, but across all sports at NYU, just because we offer so many high caliber programs, it's been a really popular option within these past few years with the COVID athletes. So it's not super unique within these past few years, but it is a really recent development.
Are you seeing more of it? Is it becoming, now granted, the COVID year is running out. We'll talk about that in a bit. But are you seeing the increase? Is it kind of like an exponential curve where it's a couple here, a couple there, and all of a sudden, oh, wait a minute, and then it starts increasing?
Yes, I would say so.
Interesting. So Megan and Morgan, I'm kind of curious before we get into the whole team aspect of it, how did you find yourselves at NYU? You hinted on it a little bit there a moment ago. Morgan, were you looking at a bunch of institutions? Were you in the portal? Were you trying to find the right option for you? Or did you already make up your mind on where you were going and then deciding to play was the next step?
I was definitely looking at a range of options. It was from low D1s to other D3s. I hit the portal after season ended. I wasn't really sure what else was out there because the current options that I had applied to and gotten in didn't work out for the basketball side. So I just wanted to see what else is out there, and NYU ended up reaching out, which actually started that process with them.
Megan, from your perspective, you reached out to NYU, right? So were you finding the school? You kind of talked about it already, but were you finding the school first and then the program, or was it kind of like Morgan, except that you were making calls yourself?
I think it was both. When I was looking at grad programs, I was looking at, like I said, both top academic and top basketball programs. So it was kind of the mix of both of those. And to be honest, at D3, there was only a handful of schools that really fit both of those for me and had a major that I didn't want to get a master's degree just to get a master's degree. So I want it to be something that's useful in the future. And so I reached out to some schools, also was reached out to by a handful of schools, kind of talked to the coaches, felt out the process, applied a few different places, and ended up visiting here and really liking it and hearing about the team and the coaches and the program that's been built here.
So obviously slightly different roads, but it's interesting because you get 2 really good basketball players, Natalie, who are suddenly calling or being contacted by NYU to join a program that's already got a lot of really good basketball players. From your perspective, Natalie, what was that experience like in the off season to know that, this transfer idea is kind of coming to you? And listen, there's a chemistry on a team. There's a dynamics on this team. There's there's egos on these teams, which is arguably why I think on the men's team this doesn't work always as well. How was that role, especially as a rising senior, to having two powerhouse players looking to come join the Violets?
I mean, I was thrilled when I heard these two were going to be joining, just because I knew that, being named All-Americans, that had some weight to it. Obviously, as a senior, you have responsibility to integrate the whole team, really create a culture and get people on board with the culture, which looks different, with grad transfers than it does maybe with, incoming freshmen, because incoming freshmen, obviously coming from high school, that's a little bit more of a blank slate. So just making sure that bringing the experience of what these two had from their previous college experiences and also integrating that with the culture that we have at NYU, especially because the experience at NYU is so unique. Definitely, I knew it was a task, but I knew anybody that is willing to come play basketball in the middle of New York City is up for that task and willing to be a part of this process. I knew that these two were going to be good fits in that sense, just the fact that they even signed up for it in the first place.
Besides the fact there's a New York-Boston rivalry to begin with, okay? We're talking about two individuals coming from Boston schools down to a New York school. There's a bit of a rivalry there that you got to park, right?
I honestly don't think that's come up too much. I think
I've
being in the
ruined
D3 world, our rivalries come more from, I feel like, conferences than anything
Sure.
else. UDA versus NewMac versus, whatever else. So
Yeah,
I don't even think it's much of a city rivalry.
Of course, two schools in the top of the NewMac who are rivals to begin with. Megan, what was the experience like in terms of trying to kind of get acclimated with the team? Not necessarily before you arrived on campus, but we can certainly talk about that. But, the process with Natalie and the others of making that decision and them welcoming you on board.
I mean, I would say the team was welcoming from day one. The first day we all got here, we went to the volleyball game together at the new facility. And so since the first day, we've been doing stuff on the court as well as off the court to help with that transition and making it more seamless. We have a lot of new girls on the team, and I think that team bonding is very important. It translates onto the court. So I think that the captains and seniors and everyone has been super welcoming from the start.
Morgan, similar question, but again, this is why I think it works so well on the women's side of things. In my experience, women tend to park the ego at the door a lot easier. Is that an accurate way of saying that? And is that kind of part of how you make sure something like this can work?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we all came in to win a national championship, and I think everyone understands that. And not only are we competitive with each other, but we also know that in order to achieve this goal, we have to accept everyone's strengths and weaknesses and really just push each other from that. And I think that's what this program does very well, is that we have that understanding and we know what to do to get to it. So
fair. Natalie, to some extent, there's got to be some players who know, and I reference Hopkins again, I knew this happened there, that knew that they had roles when they were sitting either on the bench or whatever last season, knowing there were players who would graduate or move on, that they knew there were roles they were moving themselves into or going to position themselves for. No idea Megan or Morgan were coming. How does that go over for a team that, yeah, but we've got these two other players coming in. We need to understand that our roles have now changed again.
Yeah, no matter how one person's role changes on this team, we know that every person's role is extremely important. So that could mean, more minutes on the court, less minutes on the court. There's different ways that people can contribute. And I think, again, something that's been really great about our culture is knowing that each role is equally important, no matter what that looks like, technical or non-technical role.
On the aspect of getting everybody acclimated, you talk about going to a volleyball game. What else did you all do in the lead up? Now, granted, you could meet as a team earlier now than you used to. I know that's a difference. But Natalie, what was your goal, especially as one of the leaders on this team, to get everybody acclimated and get everybody used to one another outside of just going to a volleyball game?
Well, so we have about just as many returners as we do newcomers. So there's grad transfers as well as a decent amount of freshmen.
Sure.
So what we did prior to everyone coming on campus is we actually paired each returner with 1 to 2 new players just to, check in, make sure that things were going okay, see if they had any questions, just to kind of kickstart that process. Because knowing that the returners were also close and we had a culture already established, we wanted to welcome people into that rather than making it seem like it was, a group of returners and a group of new people coming in. So making sure that we integrate ourselves within the entire team was really important.
Morgan, I can't imagine from a financial aspect, this is Division III. It's not like you were coming from a Division I. I heard one person's example that I thought was apt. Listen, you're at Division I basketball program. You've got your scholarship paid for a handful of years. You could pay for 1 year of a Division III institution. It's a good trade-off. That's not necessarily the case. This is to go to grad school is already a tough financial decision. Adding in the weight of the basketball, did that make this a tougher decision, or was it just part of the course?
It's definitely a little of both. Obviously, I had many discussions with my parents, making sure that this was feasible and something that wouldn't hurt us financially. And my parents supported me greatly, which I'm so grateful for. And they wanted this just as much as I did. So I think that really played into the decision.
Megan, you've said it. This was part of the decision already. You were going to spend this money. I'm saying you generically, certainly not you specifically. I'm not trying to find out how it's being paid for, but this was already going to be an expense. So you're just adding the basketball to it, right? This was already part of the life step forward.
Yeah. I guess kind of. I don't think I would have gone to grad school if I wasn't playing basketball.
Okay.
I probably would have gotten a job. But I decided to use my extra year to play basketball as well as get a master's degree in something that's going to be relevant for me.
Okay, that's a great insight. So this wasn't, unless you could play, this wasn't necessarily the next step forward. So finding that place you could play at a high caliber place was important. So that did play a role. You talk about the extra year, ladies, and that's what I want to get to finally on this is the COVID year. I think officially we will no longer see the COVID year in play next year. I think it's next academic year is when it finally runs out. But that's a huge dynamic, isn't it? I mean, you all have gone through something I, as a former student athlete, cannot relate to. I had 10 semesters to complete 4 years of athletics. That was it. There wasn't a grace period unless I got some major injury, and let's be honest, I wasn't going to play if there was a major injury. But that's something that you all have had to deal with and go through and added. How early on did you realize, Megan, we'll start with you. How early on did you realize you would probably end up using that COVID year in this kind of capacity? Or was it not something you fully could understand until more recently?
I would say beginning of my senior year, I really started to think about if I wanted to use it, and brought in a bunch of things, my body, the love for the game. But ultimately, I love the game of basketball, watching, playing, whatever it is. And I knew that I wanted to play for another year. So, yeah.
Makes sense. Morgan, similar question. How soon or recent did you start to think about that?
Yeah, it definitely came up in the summer before my senior year started, when I started really contemplating it and actually looking at the grad school process. And like Megan, taking into account how much playing I actually had left in my body before the senior year started and what I could take. So.
Natalie, you technically have a COVID year left. Am I correct? So I've got the timing right. Have you debated about making a similar move, whether it's staying at NYU since you and Morgan are essentially in the same class or major world, as it were, or moving on somewhere else? Has that been a conversation you've had?
I mean, yeah, recently it definitely has, especially when you look at the beginning of your senior year. Like Megan said, you have to start thinking about your post-grad life. And with as many programs as NYU has, it's definitely something I've thought about, and there are programs I'm applying to. And we'll see what happens, in the spring and where I get in and what all happens with everything else. But it's definitely something I've thought about for sure. But I can't say anything definite right now.
By the way, quick note, I was told, Morgan, that Natalie being in the same major was very helpful for you to understand the dynamics, even if it was postgraduate world, the dynamics, though, of NYU, the team, the major, all of that. Am I right?
Yes, I think that was very helpful to me because the engineering school is actually located in Brooklyn and we practice and play in Manhattan. So it was very helpful to see what that life would be like and if it was feasible for me.
Megan Morgan, you're actually lucky because the team now plays where they're supposed to be playing. Natalie, you've gone through years of you didn't know necessarily where your games were going to be taking place. So this is almost the same experience for all of you now because none of you have practiced and played in Manhattan at the Paulson Center. So this is part of what everybody can experience as a first, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty amazing. By the way, Natalie, I obviously volleyball opened the Paulson Center. You all were supposed to open the Paulson Center last season before an unfortunate water pipe went ba-boom. Bittersweet, Natalie, that you guys couldn't open up the gym?
A little bittersweet, yes, just in terms of, the logistics of everything, having to continue to travel and not being able to host the NCAA tournament last spring. However, I am super happy for the volleyball team. We have a great relationship with them and they are a fantastic and super successful team. So I'm not going to take away anything or any credit from them because they did a great job opening up the facility as well.
Yes, they did. Now, you guys opened up the facility yourselves for basketball with a tourney with MIT and Washington U in attendance. Interesting enough, got to see your UAA foes a bit earlier than you normally would. Kind of wanted final thoughts on the start of this season so far. You're off to a 4-0 start with wins over MIT, Johns Hopkins, Kane, and Colorado College. Megan, we'll start with you. How's the season started from your perspective?
I think we're off to a great start. I think we have a lot to improve on, and I think we all know that. And practices have continued to be super competitive from 1 to 21. Everyone throughout our team knows the standard that we want to set. And I think we have goals for the rest of the season, but just taking it one practice at a time and one day at a time will help us get there.
Morgan, your perspective?
Yeah, I think we've been playing great these past couple of games. I mean, obviously we're still gelling and like Megan said, we're still improving. I mean, that's a good sign if we're still improving. It's still so early in the season. You never want to peak too early. And yeah, it just makes for an exciting future for this year.
Natalie, your perspective on the year so far?
Yeah, I mean, as both of these players have said, we're off to a great start and there's still a lot to improve on. And I think a big piece of that is going to be continuing to show people what our culture is about. Obviously, I've been through it the past 3 years. And again, we talk about not having a facility. And a big part of that is we had a great culture and great people around us that were all going through that together, traveling to and from Brooklyn, different facilities. And just making sure that we bring that insight and continue to bring that insight to help gel everyone. Again, as you said earlier, making sure we're all on the same page, even with a bunch of new players in the picture.
Natalie, you got to get them ready for UAA travel. You don't have a lot of travel to begin with to start the season, but then you got to get them ready to travel, A, back to Boston, but B, to Atlanta and Rochester and Cleveland and Chicago and St. Louis. Has the process started to get them ready, or are you waiting for the right moment?
I think that, knowing that these two have been through the NCAA tournament, they know a little bit of what that's like for sure. Obviously doing that every other weekend during conference play is a little bit different. But again, the people that are willing to sign up and commit to play at NYU are the type of people that are willing to take on that challenge, grow from it, and really just have fun with it. So I have not a doubt in my mind that they will have a great time traveling as much as the rest of us have the past few years.
Yeah, fair. It's I know from UAA conversations that they love the bonding experience it provides, not only with their own team, but with the opposite gender as well. Quick note, I don't know if you can do this, ladies, but whatever airline they got, make sure, and hotel, get frequent flyer programs take advantage of the points.
Yeah, we definitely can. So
Did very good. So do that, and then you're going to be golden. I mean, maybe not as golden as Natalie after 4 years of this, but 1 year of it ain't too shabby either. Ladies, really appreciate you coming on, giving us a little bit of an insight on things. Certainly a different dynamic. I love that there's just two NUMAC players who said, hey, forget Boston. Let's go to New York and play some basketball. We have a tradition on the show. We always give the final word to our guests. Whatever you think needs to be said or added that we didn't talk about that you think's important, or whatever you want to add to this, you're welcome to. On our screen, we will go left to right. Megan, we will start with you. Any final thoughts to our viewers at home?
Thanks for having us, and we're looking forward to a great season.
I appreciate it. Morgan?
Yeah, we're just really excited for this year, and thank you again for having us.
Absolutely. And Natalie, you get to wrap it up.
yeah, I think my teammates have said it all. I'm super excited knowing what NYU has been through, and I'm just excited to see that continue to progress. So,
well, congratulations to all three of you on what you have done to this point in your careers. We've enjoyed watching you play on separate teams. I think we're truly going to enjoy watching you all play on one team. I know Transylvania is ahead of you. You've got your eyes on them. And we're looking forward to maybe a rematch somewhere down the road. Shameless plug. Julie Folks coming up later in the program. Ladies, take care. Good luck with the academics and the basketball season. Look forward to catching up and connecting with you in the future.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Megan Bauman, Morgan Morrison, Natalie Bruns joining us on the Hoopsville Hotline. Really appreciate their time to do that. As we mentioned, Julie Folks coming up, but I want to thank Jeff Bernstein and Meg Barber especially for helping arrange that. I told you there was one other individual, and I've already forgotten to look up that individual's info. Give me a second, because did some heavy lifting for me to help later. Oh, Kai. I want to thank Kai for his help as well. We're going to take a break. When we said Julie Folks from Transylvania joins us. Still ahead. Also, we will bring back our conversation with John Krikorian from Christopher Newport last week, and we'll hear from Dave Hixon from Amherst. You're listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com from the Hoopsville studios. Back with more after this.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's nearly 850 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over 2 decades. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're D3Hoops.com at www.D3Hoops.com.
Coach of the Year, Administrator of the Year, All-America Team, Wade Trophy. The WBCA doesn't just honor coaches, but players, administrators, and much more. The WBCA strives to honor those who have contributed to the advancement of women's basketball. Celebrate the present, honor the past, look to the future.
We are calling you, all of you. We are calling all Division III schools to join our cause.
It's on us to start the change. It's on us to be the change. It's on us. It's on Division III. It's on all of us to stop sexual assault.
I learned a lot of valuable lessons playing college football. I never thought about the health benefits of exercise until I actually started to talk to coaches in college. It's not only just for performance, it's for life. My coaches instilled the importance of well-being, not only building up strength, mental health, getting enough sleep, eating properly is all what it is to be healthy. I decided that I want to go into personal trainer and share my knowledge that I obtained in college about physical and mental well-being.
Welcome back to Hoopsville, everybody. Rolled through the first live interview with no issues, and we're moving forward, though the rest of the show is a little bit pre-taped. If you got questions for us, you can tweet, post, whatever it is, at Twitter, X, whatever it's called, at D3Hoopsville. Of course, email hoopsville@d3sports.com. You can also find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Hoopsville. By the way, all the information on the bottom of your screen to assist if you happen to be watching us, whether it's on your mobile, on your computer, or maybe it's on the big screen, thanks to our Team One Sports app. You can find it on Team One Sports at Android TV, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and Roku. Simulcasting on Facebook as well as YouTube, and we appreciate everybody joining us as well. All right, let's talk Transylvania women's basketball. They're the national champs, defending national champs, preseason number 1, off to a good start at 1-0 with a good win over DePaul to get things going. We were supposed to have Julie Folks on the show last week, but that fell through. And then we had some timing issues, so we made sure to pre-record our conversation with Julie, talking about the Pioneers, expectations for this upcoming year, and so much more. 3, 2, 1. Now joining us on the Hoopsville hotline is the head coach of the Transylvania Pioneers women's basketball team. It is Julie Folks. And Coach, first and foremost, thanks for dealing with us on the first attempt at our season debut. Thanks for joining us on the second attempt. Welcome to the program, and welcome to the new season, and congratulations. We haven't had a proper chance to say that to you on the show, on the championship from last year. Are you guys still kind of riding that high a little bit?
Well, first, thank you for having me, and I am glad I'm not the one that has to do the technology piece, because I would be a giant fail at any of that.
Seems I'm pretty
but yeah,
close.
I think it's been a fun off season, and that piece has been good, and we have moved forward into the next year. I think having our first real game helped us kind of finalize, hey, we've got to shake off all of the stuff from last year and figure out what parts of us are going to be different and how are we going to move forward and try to be successful again this year.
Certainly. There was an aspect leading up all of last year of, can they get there? Can they rise above? We keep seeing you have these great seasons and you can't even get out of your own gym in the playoffs. I know a lot of that was on you guys. At what point in the season or the postseason did you finally feel like, okay, we've gotten past the what ifs, we've gotten past the I don't knows, we're there, at least from an internal point of view?
I think the year before, when we were undefeated and went to the Elite Eight and had a couple big wins in that stretch, that year we had one of the toughest strength of schedules in the country. And so you took that and that team won and then went to the Elite Eight. And then when everybody essentially came back, I think it really hit us about 5 or 6 games in when our defense started where we had finished the year before. And we really realized, hey, we're going to be tough to score on. And not only are we going to be tough to score on, we're going to have one of the best defenses in the country. And we're going to hang our hat on that. And I think there's a part of me, like internally in my soul, that was a little disappointed because I wanted to always have the best offense in the country. And a couple of years ago, when we were in the Sweet 16, we had the most efficient offense in the country, and that team got to the Sweet 16. And so at some point, we had to come to terms with defense and rebounding maybe being the actual key. And so I think, we had changed our goal to tighten up on our defense and what we thought we should be giving up a quarter. And we kept hitting that goal. And I think that was when everybody realized, hey, we have the pieces, we have the experience. And while our schedule last year didn't mimic the one the year before, we already knew we could do those sort of things. And for us, I think we had a lot of confidence in what we could do, mostly because we knew we could defend and keep ourselves in every game that we played.
Well, it was interesting because, you guys, for lack of a better description, pretty much dominated most of last season, other than just the record. Even in the playoffs, I think there were some games there that a lot of us kind of thought, okay, this is going to be a test. Oh, really wasn't. Beat NYU by 16. You beat Ohio Northern by 14. You beat Smith by 11. I know that was a little closer than the 11 points, but you didn't have that nail-biter come down to the buzzer game at any point. And I think at that point for me, I kind of went, yeah, this feels different to this squad. And you walked all the way to Dallas with that and finally got that nail-biter against Christopher Newport. Just tell me about the experience at Dallas, but also about that hurdle of getting to that championship game. Heck, getting to the semifinals in the first place.
Yeah. Well, in some ways, I think for everybody here, it felt like a little bit of the monkey, off your back, because we felt like we had some teams that did that. And everybody knows part of the postseason is just staying healthy. And from a just overall health perspective, we were in great shape the entire postseason last year. We didn't have flu or injuries or anything like that. And so from that, we were in a physically really good place. And, I think we always like our chances when we are only planning for one game. And so the joint championship for us maybe played into what I think is some of our biggest strengths and, our team's ability to prepare. And so we knew we only had to go into the semifinals for Smith and spend that whole time, and then 12 days to work on Christopher Newport. And so I thought that gave us a chance to really be at our best for both of those. And so we loved it. I mean, if you ever get to, go to one Final Four and one national championship, you got to pick the year of the joint championship. That was an incredible experience for our players. Between all the fun things they got to do for the hype and the 12 days they got to do to have the community, celebrate them. It was really the best part was just watching them get to go through all that. And obviously then when you come out on top, that's a pretty special day.
Yeah, I couldn't tell at one point, especially on the red carpet, who was having more fun, you guys or Brian Lane. It was a tough call.
Yeah, tough call. And it was great that the men's conference, national championship was in Houston. And so we had, all of our men's staff there as well. And I don't think Brian would ever have missed that. But, he's one of our biggest cheerleaders and supporters. And so we were very lucky to have them beside us.
Yeah, we remember talking about his enthusiasm last year. Listen, this is a squad that brought back everybody, but quickly before we leave the Dallas side, talk about the game with that squad and what you guys did to really, I think, play a team that I can't find on your schedule anyone similar to the captains. I know you said you had 12 days to prep, but what was it ultimately that got you guys over the hump and to that national title against CNU?
Yeah. Well, Christopher Newport's pressing defense obviously is their signature and what they are amazing at. And when we first started, we were playing a practice 5-on-12. We wanted everything. There was not a spot on the floor where you weren't going at least against 7 in the backcourt, 7 in the middle, 7 on that end. And we needed them to, we thought, get very comfortable with all of the uncertainty that they create. And we tried a lot of people in a lot of different spots on the floor. And going into that final game, we'd moved people into different spots in the press break than they had ever played. Just because over the course of those 10 days, we started to see some different trends. And, I give our players a ton of credit. They absolutely understood between their 3 presses, by the time we were actually there in the game, how we were going to attack it. If you could have seen the first 3 days, you'd have felt confident it was not going to go our way. But to our players' credit, every day we came, we learned more, we tried more, and we found a plan. And I thought our last 2 practice sessions went really well. It was a weird experience because you can't simulate their press by going 80% and trying to rest legs and keep people healthy. We really had to go. It was probably our most intense 10 days of practice because there was no way to simulate it at half speed. And our players did a great job. We were able to flip the script a little bit and press them and do some different things full court, which actually, I think simulating their press actually helped us be able to do some different things on defense as well. So it was fun. It was a really fun experience. It was a great challenge to just go against something different. It'd been a while, I think, because of our guard play in the backcourt since anybody had pressed us. And so that was a different day and experience.
Oh, I'm sure that's fascinating to hear too. The dynamics of all of that. Impressive championship, to say the least. Sorry it took us so long to talk about it, but let's pivot towards the actual season. Again, I mentioned almost everybody back in case anybody hasn't checked out the roster yet or the stats. That includes Deja Thornton. You only lost 1 player from that unit. This feels like a tough season in the sense that, okay, you climbed the mountain, you got to the top, you got the championship. And so the assumption is you should be able to do that again with everybody back. How do you keep everyone focused on the task that no, you're starting from square one essentially again?
Yeah. I think their biggest strength since they've been here, the upperclassmen, is that they're highly competitive people who love big challenges. I think the bigger the challenge, the more inspired they are. They have never shied away from anything that we have thrown in front of them. And in that included this year, we decided we did our first scrimmage against Ashland. So we had the reigning national championships play each other. And then our first exhibition was EKU. And so we wanted it to be very challenging right from the get-go, and make that a very hard preseason. And so that was pretty fun. And, we knew they were going to be excited about that heading into the year. And we were doing everything we could to obviously prepare for the DePaul game. It is a very tough place to go and win. And, as we all know, the first game of the year can have some really deep postseason implications in terms of hosting. And so we wanted to give ourselves the best shot that we had to go there, knowing they had an entire month to prepare for us as well, and give ourselves a good shot. But, losing Maddie Kelly, and it wasn't just anybody. It's the All-American, our point guard, and, who's really led the show for a couple years. And so, I think a lot of the beginning has just been figuring out how are we going to be different, who's going to fill different roles, and who's going to kind of help move us forward in different ways. And so it's been fun to do that as a group.
Yeah, no, it's certainly nothing against who you lost. Madison led the team in assists, led the team in scoring, was, as you said, an All-American, certainly contributed in other ways. I think she was top 5 in steals, certainly a solid rebounder. A lot of pieces that someone has to fill in. You've got a lot of upperclassmen experience. You also have a lot of underclassmen. You might have 5 who quote unquote could graduate at the end of this year, but you've got a whole host of underclassmen. So there's a lot of experience, but there's a lot who are learning from that experience. Yeah. How do you balance making sure that those underclassmen not only learn, but then, physically get the internship, as it were?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a really good point. And one of the things that we always take a lot of pride in is when we have big turnover, having the next group ready to go. And, 2 years ago when this group came into their junior year, outside of Maddie and Kennedy, the others hadn't been starting. And so we didn't know how they were going to do when they were in the limelight. And obviously they shined. And so, part of what we're doing is, I think it's the great thing of every day, our underclassmen are going against some of the most talented players in the country. And the great piece is our upperclassmen are always excellent teachers. They take a lot of pride in making sure the people behind them are learning and understanding what the success has been from. And so it's a fun environment. Practices are very competitive, obviously. And we mix groups, and then we have kind of the upperclassmen go against the underclassmen, so everybody can kind of see exactly where we're at with things on offense and defense. But I feel good about our next group. We have a lot of underclassmen who are very competitive and very skilled. And so, when this turnover happens, we essentially have seven months right now, 6 months, I guess, to really make sure that, hey, we're ready once this graduation hits to, see what we can do in the future too. So trying to always be planning for both the immediate present and, the not too distant future. It always feels like the next season is on you quickly.
Oh, that's the truth. I know that feeling very well from my seat. I can't imagine.
I believe that.
Yeah, I can't imagine what it's like from your seat. It never ends. Speaking of which, it's one of the reasons we're pre-recording with you. You're already looking ahead to the future on the recruiting trails as we're live on the air. You mentioned the ball game. That's the only game you played, interesting enough, this season. You decided to play one game and then do the national tournament treatment and take 2 weeks off before your next game against Maryville coming up this weekend at home. In a tournament, we should point out. You'll still have Wittenberg ahead of you in Defiance and Franklin in conference play, along with Manchester and Bluffton, before getting back into non-conference play late in December. And then it's back in a conference play. And to your point, the first game of the season, I've already had a colleague jokingly say, well, I've already penciled in Transylvania to the NCAA tournament because they got the win over DePaul. And listen, Chris Hoffman won her 700th game immediately following that. That has been the barometer in that part of the country. Tell me a little bit more about the game and the break now to kind of get everybody ready for the next one after such a kind of herky-jerky start to the season. Yeah.
Well, the break was purposeful. So last year we hosted the NCAA volleyball tournament. And our volleyball team went to the national championship, the tournament, 18 tournament last year. And honestly, they returned everybody, and we knew our volleyball team was going to be very good, and our teams are very close. The volleyball team came to the national championship in Dallas. And so we purposely left that weekend cleared out. We didn't want to be moving things around. We wanted to make sure if they were here, we were going to be able to support them. Unfortunately, they lost in their Sweet 16 game in 5 at Hope, and it was one of the we couldn't get there that day, and it was one of the best volleyball games. I mean, it's just powerhouse. When it was tied 8-8 in the 5th game, I thought we had it, and they were going to go to California. So that was the reason for the break. We didn't want to be planning on top of volleyball. We wanted to be here to support volleyball. That's important to us. And in this past weekend would have been the normal opening weekend, so there's still plenty of time to get the 25 in.
Good point.
But next week's a big week. We'll go 4 games in 8 days, and obviously, Maryville will come in. And then we have the winner of or loser of Alma and Kowloon, and they, or Wisconsin Lutheran, and they've been good. And then Wittenberg on Wednesday, and they have 2 top 25 wins right now. And then we hit league play, and so we know it's a very big week. We've worked hard to try to have a good week of practice. I think this time of year is always hard. When the semester's winding down and lots of things are due and heading into finals. So I think the next 3 weeks are kind of the biggest grind of the year in terms of balancing it all. And so we hope to have a really good week next week and find a way to play well and really quick turnarounds in terms of game prep.
The bigger D3 guy in me loves that you guys took that moment to try and make that work if they're at home and stuff. We don't have to dive into the weeds on it, but hats off to you and the program for thinking that through. Again, the DePaul game, big one, into conference. It's a conference that the argument's been hasn't really been able to test you. RHIT hasn't been Rose-Hulman hasn't been as strong in recent years as it had been previously. Some others kind of are there, but not. Berea's coming. Interestingly enough, not this year, but in the future, that could certainly make things a little bit more interesting. I know we talked about this in the past, but I don't think we've talked about it this early. How do you go through the conference schedule? Knowing you got to keep winning, but also that you got to find ways to keep yourselves kind of fresh while testing yourself. Like, what's going to be the balance this season to make sure you can do what you did last year all over again, but also knowing the target is huge now. It's absolutely huge on the back of your team.
Yeah. Well, from a conference perspective, Hanover had a great year last year and was right there on the edge. And, they went and they beat Simpson to start the year. And they have a young lady who scored 41 and they're very talented. And, Coach Jones got to be our rep. So he's seen everything that we've done now for the last 3 weekends. So he probably knows our offense better than I do. And so he's doing a great job. So I think they're going to be right there in the conversation. And Mount St. Joe, she last year in her first year did a really good job. They're 5-0 now. And so I think, the top has elevated again this year, which we're excited about. I think, we had some graduations and some turnover and, coaching turnovers in the league. And so, I think we're going to have some really good games in conference, and that excites me. And, I think good and bad, everybody knows that we play zone. And so in some ways, it's conference play becomes a little bit harder because the more times you see it, the more chances you have, to figure out what might work. And so sometimes it's easier. It feels like when we play teams just for, one time, it takes the first half to just kind of get adjusted to what's going on, and it's different and, harder to simulate, I think, than, you play 14 games in a row against man-to-man, and then you get a team that predominantly only zones. That's not a trade secret at this point with this group. But I think that is one of the advantages out of conference. It's sometimes in conference, every time somebody plays us, and we have groups that have played it now, 2 or 3 times a year, they just, keep coming up with new ways that are working.
Well, that's not a bad thing either. It helps you keep you all,
great.
kind of understanding that you could see twists and turns. I personally love the put 12 men on the 12 players on the court mentality in practice. That's a lot of fun. That sounds
I was even at the front of the press, and I'm not very good. So
there you go. Hey, by the way, when are we going to get you and the men's team out to Vegas?
Oh gosh, if you could lower airfare at that time of year, that would be.
I know that one. Yeah.
This is the first year in a long time we haven't. Yeah, we didn't fly this year. Just the rates are just. Yeah, you add in, as everybody knows, the price of buses has gone up 100% in the last 5 years, and it's, I think everybody around the country right now is trying to figure out how do you balance the cost increase, and and that's good and bad, and that means we play some games that are always closer. But this year is the least amount of travel we've done in a while, just because we're trying to balance some of the budget stuff out. It's obviously getting harder for everybody right now, but we would love to come to Vegas. Our team would, they're like a team that would really like to walk up and down and see everything. They like all the new experiences.
Yeah, no, I think you guys would have a fun time there, but I can totally hear you. I cringed when I saw the airfare this year myself. Usually fly Southwest. Usually it's like, oh yeah, get a really good rate. And I'm looking at this year going, that is not a good rate. So I can feel that pain, but we would love to have you, obviously, and certainly can appreciate those dynamics. I don't want to keep you any longer. I know you got busy places to go. Again, really appreciate you sticking with us, basically on hold for almost a week. So we appreciate that. As always, though, we give the coach the final word, or the guest. Any final thoughts you want to share with those who may be tuned in tonight?
Well, Dave, I appreciate that you guys do this and that you're back for another season. Everybody at the end of the year is super excited to watch your guys' predictions, and you guys get it, so close and so right. But all of your work, obviously, we just appreciate it. It adds, as you know, D3 sports, the top is really elite, and you guys help everybody really come to realize how good the top of the country is in all of the sports. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Coach. I appreciate it. As always, love having you on. We will figure out how to get you on. Deja, we're waiting for her presidential run as well when she's graduated from Transylvania. We haven't forgotten her aspects
there you go.
and goals. And we're looking forward to seeing how the team plays the rest of the way. Take care of yourself. Have a great Thanksgiving. Have a great holidays. Have a great season. I know we'll talk to you later in the year, and in the meantime, enjoy it.
No, thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Julie Folks joining us on the Hoopsville Hotline. Appreciate Coach coming on the show and dealing with our issues last week and agreeing to find a way to get on to this week. Transylvania's off to a 1-0 start with that win over DePaul. They had some exhibition games against Ashland and Eastern Kentucky. Ashland, remember, won the D2 national championship last year. That's a heck of a game we couldn't see. D2 versus D1 champs, or D3 champs. Whoa, where am I going there? LSU played ETBU. That's a different story. Coming up, they are at home, just like NYU, for a whole mess of games. So they will be home against Maryville in their tournament with a couple teams. I'm not sure who's on the other side of that, to be honest. Then they're home against Wittenberg and Defiance before they'll hit the road for the rest of their HCAC pre-holiday schedule. They're at home for a holiday tournament before getting back into conference play. So they'll try and take advantage of the Clive Beck Center as much as the Paulson Center will be trying to take advantage by NYU. We'll see when those two programs may meet up in the NCAA tournament. We'll take another break. When we come back, we will bring back our conversation with John Krikorian last week. He was kind enough to join us, and he was the only segment that worked. But some of you may have tuned out, so we'll bring it back for you. And still ahead, we talked Dave Hixon, the now official Naismith Hall of Famer. We'll talk to him coming up as well. You listen to Hoopsville. Back with more after this. The National Association of Basketball Coaches is the nation's premier professional development and advocacy organization for basketball coaches at every level. The NABC strives to serve as the voice for coaches on national issues while advancing the core value of leadership, service, advocacy, education, and inclusion. To learn more about the NABC and to become a member, visit NABC.com and follow the NABC on social media at NABC1927. That's NABC.com or NABC1927 on social media.
These are your teams, your players, your community of fans. This is where they play, where they practice, where you cheer. At every meet, every event, every game. Your community is passionate, dedicated, supportive. You know the tension of a close game and the thrill of the win. So while you're cheering, keep an eye out for anything out of the ordinary. If you see something suspicious, say something to local authorities.
I learned a lot of valuable lessons playing college football. I never thought about the health benefits of exercise until I actually started to talk to coaches in college. It's not only just for performance, it's for life. My coaches instilled the importance of well-being, not only building up strength, mental health, getting enough sleep, eating properly is all what it is to be healthy. I decided that I want to go on a personal trainer and share my knowledge that I obtained in college about physical and mental well-being.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's nearly 850 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over 2 decades. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're D3Hoops.com at www.D3Hoops.com. The National Association of Basketball Coaches is the nation's premier professional development and advocacy organization for basketball coaches at every level. The NABC strives to serve as the voice for coaches on national issues while advancing the core value of leadership, service, advocacy, education, and inclusion. To learn more about the NABC and to become a member, visit NABC.com and follow the NABC on social media at NABC1927. That's NABC.com or NABC1927 on social media.
These are your teams, your players, your community of fans. This is where they play, where they practice, where you cheer. At every meet, every event, every game. Your community is passionate.
Joining us on the Hoopsville Hotline, it is John Krikorian. John, much like your season, I'm off to a rough start too.
This might have been a sign here, Dave.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to help. Hey, listen, first off, let's back up. Obviously, the championship was great. We talked about that. It was a big boom for the school in the region. The women's team just came close to doubling it up and making it 2 national championships for CNU. The offseason must have been amazing.
It was, Dave. We had things like visit to the White House. We spent an afternoon at the governor's mansion with Governor Youngkin. We had a parade here in Newport News and were recognized with city council and stuff. So, I mean, it was awesome, well-deserved for our guys. Camp was exciting with all the kids that were excited to see our players. So it was awesome.
At what point did you guys have to say, okay, listen, we need to pivot. We need to go start focusing on next year? Or how much did you want to try and enjoy what you guys got to experience?
Yeah, I've never been through that before. So I don't have a great answer other than, I don't really mess with our guys too much in the summer anyway. That's really their time. So the motivation is kind of on them to decide what they want to do. And I thought they came back this fall in the right mindset. Being able to practice a little bit earlier, I think has been good for everybody. Thought our guys came in hungry and ready to go. So, and we brought in 9 freshmen, and they have really injected some energy, enthusiasm, and some talent at some positions. So, I feel good about the group. So, but I have no idea. What I've learned so far is that, you go on the road against really good teams. Even though the target has been on our back for quite some time, maybe it's another level that our opponent are gonna play to. That both teams, Marietta and Hampden-Sydney, played, I thought, at an incredibly high level. Not that we didn't play well, but we certainly didn't match theirs. So we're gonna have to do that.
Talk to me a little bit about the team before we get into those games. I'm curious because when I looked at it as a top 25 voter, I thought to myself, you've got more coming back than I anticipated. I know when you and I talked post-game of that championship and a little bit offline, you kind of pointed at a couple of guys going, well, he's actually not leaving, and he's actually not leaving. So give us a sense. Who did you lose, and what were the keys that came back?
So we lost 5 players. And, I think that, just every team is different, and these things, to win championships, any championship, never mind the national championship, takes so much just chemistry, work, effort, and all those things. And so, you're going to point to Matt Brody, who was really a glue guy for us, who defended the other team's best player, scored big baskets, stretched the defense with his 3-point shooting, was a great leader. So we lost Matt. Rodney Graves, who had come in as a transfer from DIII, gave us huge minutes, played really well in a couple of the games in the NCAA tournament, and really played pretty well all year. But then we had guys like Brandon Edmond, Tyler Trimble, and Nick Thomas, who didn't play as much, but they had been around for a long time and provided really, really good leadership. Kind of helped us keep the group going in the right direction. So those are the 5 guys we lost. And then we brought in, a slew of freshmen. So Trey Barber, John Hines, Ty Henderson, guys that had great years last year. They're returning, a little banged up, but they're here.
Yeah, that's the thing. You bring back, you mentioned Trey Barber, Hines, both Hines, we should point out, and other guys from this unit. And that's why I was like, geez, this is a bit of a scary unit. Did you guys have a different weeks leading up? Like, how did you treat what is now a new rule in Division III where you can spend more time prior to October 15th with the players? Did you guys change that up? How did that affect how you guys got ready for the season?
I thought it was great. I'm really pleased that the NCAA did that. I think it's really beneficial to the student athlete. So all we did pretty much was go 3 weeks earlier and go 2 or 3 days. So, I think it was 2 days, 3 days, 2 days, leading up. So they were able to have a good practice, a day off, a good practice, a couple days off, a good practice. It's so much better, in my mind, for their health and kind of easing into the conditioning of what is going to be a very long season. So I thought it was good. We were healthy throughout all of that. And, I thought we were kind of where we wanted to be. Challenge for us was with these freshmen, we spent quite a bit of time teaching them and getting them ready because we're going to need some of them to contribute. And so the balance of having older guys that you've been there, done it, they know what we're doing, and you're teaching some younger guys the very basics. It's a fine balance, and I think we did okay. Certainly, at our results here, I think we could have done better.
You mentioned that there's a target on your back. Yeah, there's been a target on you guys for a while. But at the same time, you've always had a little bit of an underdog role. I think a lot of people for a number of years thought, yeah, as good as the captains are, they're not in this conversation, or we think this team will beat them. Marietta will beat them, or Randolph-Macon will beat them. And so you guys have always seemed to come from that underdog role. That feels like this year it's different. You are the expected one now. Has that affected how the team's mentality is?
Yeah, I don't know, but you are right. I mean, in the unbelievable history that is Christopher Newport basketball, the very first time we were ranked number 1 was last December. That's pretty shocking, actually. with some of the success that we've had before me and during my time, and we struggled to handle that last year. Immediately, we lost 2 in a row after being ranked number 1. So I felt that this year, maybe we had learned, what that was going to be and what it looked like, and I think we have to a certain degree, but maybe we're still getting used to it. I don't know. I know that we played some really tough teams on the road, so I'm not going to overreact to some tough losses against 2 teams that I think are really terrific and on a national level on the road.
Become the number 1 team in December, lose 2 in a row. You're the preseason number 1, and you lose 2 out of 3. I'm sensing a theme. Would you like to coordinate when you become the number 1 team, looking at your schedule and how you want to rally the guys?
Well, our statement to the guys has been the same thing since the day I got into coaching. And, I just don't take this the wrong way. I think rankings are great for the fans. I think they're a great way for entertainment value. They provide a lot of competitive juice to the games, but as a coach and your team, our message every year is there's only one ranking that matters, and that's the one that comes out at the end of the season after the last game. And
John,
for the first time, we're number 1.
Yeah, that's not when you told me. I'm many a conversation asking why you weren't ranked higher. Come on, be honest. I'm kidding.
Yeah, right.
Totally kidding. Let's talk. Let's talk about the season, though. At this point, you played 3 games, and this is no slouch of a schedule. Now, I know because of the setup with a C2C, you've got to go out there and schedule. You've got to go find, and you've never shied away. Hampden-Sydney, Kenyon, Marietta, Randolph-Macon, Johns Hopkins, Buffalo State, Rowan. That's the first kind of salvo here before we turn into December. Kenyon, under a new head coach, hasn't had the best of times. You played them at Marietta, maybe the one down there. But Hampden-Sydney, Marietta, Randolph-Macon, Johns Hopkins, all perennial these days, powerhouse teams. Hampden-Sydney came in number 8 in the preseason bowl. You knew going into this was not going to be an easy stretch. I'm assuming you went into this expecting that there's no way to expect to be undefeated.
Yeah, I never really looked at it like that. We, as you mentioned, if you look back, we schedule as difficult as we can. I don't shy away from playing better teams or more talented teams or teams that I think are going to provide us some growth and learning opportunities. So it just so happened this year that they all were stacked up, kind of back to back a little bit, coming off of the championship. And, honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. I mean, if there's any complacency, it's long gone now. And if any of these freshmen wanted a easy transition into college basketball, see you later. So, and we've played a number of freshmen in these big games. Yeah. So, I never worried too much about losing games. Obviously, we want to win every time we step on the floor, and we expect to perform at our highest level. But, we don't win the championship last year if not for that back-to-back loss in December. We don't get it if not for losing to Randolph-Macon. It's part of the deal. And I think those teams that go undefeated and win the whole thing, I just have so much respect. I couldn't imagine doing it without some bumps along the way with that shared adversity where your team has got to really dig in and decide what they stand for and what they're willing to do to get there. And we're going through that right now.
As you mentioned, these games have all been on the road. The next, you actually start on the home side of things tomorrow on Wednesday against Randolph-Macon and then Johns Hopkins this weekend. So you'll get home at least to play things at the Freeman Center. But listen, a couple losses I don't think would be the most shocking thing. I think that stood out to me was the fact that it was a 74-53 loss to Hampden-Sydney. What was it about that game at their place that, obviously being the first game of the season, just didn't click for you guys?
They were awesome. I mean, they played terrific, and Caleb had them ready, and those guys, we ended their season last year at their place. So we would have had to really perform at a things would have just had to go really well, and I think it could have. We lost 2 starters during the game to injury. Not that that's an excuse. We have a next man up mentality, but those guys were playing really well. Colin Hines and Ian Anderson couldn't finish the game. And those little things can snowball a little bit. We had some freshmen step in that maybe weren't quite ready for that moment. But honestly, it's a credit to Hampden Sydney, and it got away from us. And we missed shots. I think we were 3 for 24 from 3, and you sprinkle that in there, and you're going to get your butt whooped, and we did.
I did notice that those 2 guys aren't back yet, at least in the next 2 box scores. Are these long-term injuries, or do you guys hope it's short-term?
Yeah, we've had it, and I think people talk about what does it take to win a national championship. They never asked me that before. They ask me now. And not that I know, but the one thing I do know is that you need to have, the majority of your team remain pretty healthy throughout the year. And we were able to do that last year. And we got hit with it here early. We just had another starter go down at Marietta, and it'll be out for the year. And, those guys I think they'll be back in a limited role. So, we just gotta. All that said, I really like the opportunities that they provide for some other guys, and I think we have some talent. We have incredibly competitive practices, so I think there's going to be some names that you've never heard before. That if we have the season I'm hopeful we can have, that you'll be talking about in February.
Well, and you also will have a point, because the way you have to schedule, you're going to have a point where you can get these guys some time and some minutes in games that you should be able to still win. And this isn't a knock on the Mary Baldwins of the world out there, but you've got to schedule anybody and everybody. Not everybody can be on the caliber of Hampden Sydney and Johns Hopkins. So you're going to have some time to trial and error a little bit, as long as you win. Obviously, there's everyone's going to be coming gunning it for you. But is that a benefit to some degree?
Yeah, although like I said, these guys are playing right now. So it'll make them more ready for every game. I mean, and I know, again, it's great. You got to talk about these teams and they're ranked and all that, but you're competing against yourself. It's about us. That's how I've always approached this thing. And, let's play the best, let's get better. And it doesn't matter what the record of the other team is. I mean, I can tell you stories, 7-8 years ago, we went into a place that, hadn't won a game in the conference and they knock us off. You got to be ready to play.
Oh, that's absolutely the truth. Yeah, I can understand that entirely. Listen, you're going to have an interesting quote unquote conference slate too. Mary Washington, not a slouch at all in any stretch of the imagination. Salisbury's always going to give you a hard time. You're going to have other conference mates that certainly are going to be gunning for you, and you get that travel aspect of it, of the West Coast. Though on the schedule, I don't see you making a trip out to Santa Cruz right now. How do you split up your season? Do you say, okay, here's our early part, we got to focus and do this. Then there's this section of it, and then there's this, et cetera, et cetera. How are you going to break up the season?
Yeah, so the biggest key in our scheduling is filling the voids in January. And Mo at Salisbury and Marcus and Mary Wash, we play like a little round robin. It's a typical conference deal. So that takes up February. That's fairly normal. So it's just kind of like the last 3 weeks of January, trying to find teams that have a bye or are willing to play at that time. And I think we were able to do that really well. And not that having a little 7 or 8 day break in there is the worst thing, but you don't want like a 2-week break, I don't think.
Sure.
So just finding teams that can do that. It just so happened to be, I think, Pfeiffer fit in there, and Santa Cruz is coming from the West Coast to play all of us again. So I really like the balance at that time of, game, few days off, game. I think we have a chance to be in a decent rhythm. as we head into February. And absolutely Mary Washington, I mean, they got a lot of really good pieces back, brought some in, looked like they played Catholic really tough. It's always a rival game, and the championship goes through Fredericksburg this year as they host. So, I think the C2C is going to be a really good tournament at the end here.
Well, and the other thing interesting about your schedule is I see a lot of different styles. So you see Hamden, Sydney, and Marietta, Randolph-Macon, Johns Hopkins. Buffalo State doesn't play like any of them. Virginia Wesleyan's going to give you a completely different look with Macedo, still coaching there. Barry and Emory, back-to-back games. I don't think there's anything common about those two. Plus Marymount and Salisbury and Mary Washington. To some degree, your schedule prepares you really well for a possible March run because you see a lot of everything.
Yeah, that's a great point, Dave. And we've kind of hit on that a little bit, but you're absolutely right. When we are able to get to the postseason, and we're such a heavy scouting team, it's helpful to say, as especially in a back-to-back, you play Wheaton and Mary Hardin Baylor back-to-back, and it's hard to teach the players 10 brand new players overnight and have them ready. But it's a lot easier if you say, hey, this team plays exactly like Lynchburg or whoever. And it kind of clicks. And then, as long as you hit it right, your players can feel a little more comfortable that, okay, been there, done that. We know what we're up against. They're going to trap. They're going to zone. We're going to see this action on defense. I think it's a really good point. I think it's one of the benefits of playing such a variety of teams.
Going back to the school, the championship and everything, obviously women's soccer won a championship a few years ago. You've had success with softball. Women's basketball was on the verge last year. Tell me a little bit about how much has changed on campus in terms of the atmosphere, the expectations, et cetera, from the time you started, because Christopher Newport was always good, but now it feels like everyone thinks that every sport should be running for a championship, and that's got to be an amazing buzz on a campus.
Yeah, it has. I mean, it's the one thing 13 years ago or 14, whatever it is now, that, when I arrived on campus and it was about half complete of this $1 billion renovation, you could see what it was going to be. You could start to get a sense of the excitement on campus for athletics. Basketball had already had a great history, but not the Final Four. And no team had won a national championship. A few had been close. When I first got here, volleyball hosted. I think they were in the championship. Field hockey, I think, was in the championship. So there's certainly some really, really good teams. But once soccer won that thing, it's almost like, it just provided belief for the rest of the student athletes on campus who had been really close. And immediately softball knocked that thing over, and we were able to get there. And we've had some teams right now that, I think they're close. I thought our field hockey team had a great chance this year. We host the Final Four, and they just got knocked out in the last round. But I think women's soccer is still going. Football just won the NJAC, and they're going to go to Randolph-Macon this weekend for a game in the NCAA. So, yeah, we were 7th in the Learfield, and we don't have a pool. I mean, it's crazy. We only have but so many sports. You got to score in 20 of them. So yeah, I mean, the level of competitive excellence and the commitment on campus it's really awesome. It's everything that you could ask for as a student athlete and a coach.
John, you don't have a pool, but you do have a large body of water shortly near. I'm just saying, put some lanes out there, and you guys got swimming.
Yeah, we have a pool and a pond, Dave. The pond would be good for you.
Yes. Yes, it would. Well played, sir. Hey, John, appreciate you the time. Appreciate the patience with us, too, as well tonight due to our hiccups here. As always, love chatting with you. I know we're starting their season with you. Maybe we'll get you guys back on a little bit later in the year to hear how things have gone since then. Good luck with the injuries. Hate that on anybody. And we'll look forward to seeing how the captains play the rest of the year. You know this. As always, we give the guests the final word. Any final thoughts you want to share with those who may be tuned in?
Not today, man. It's go time. I'm so focused on Randolph Macon, I can't even think straight right now. So Josh Merkel's got me up late at night right now. So tune in. It's going to be a heck of a ball game tomorrow, and this is what these kids play for. And I feel privileged to be able to coach in this one tomorrow. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Hey, John, the two previous national champs facing off. I just wish I could get down there. It should be a dandy of a game.
Yeah, it will be. Awesome. Hey, thanks, Dave.
Take care of yourself. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks.
John Gregorian joining us last week on the Hoopsville Show, the only thing that actually aired properly other than the opening block. Appreciated John coming on. By the way, he mentioned women's soccer was still in the mix. Unfortunately, they lost in the quarterfinals to Cal Lu. Cal Lutheran on to the championship weekend in Salem, Virginia, along with Messiah. So it'll be Cal Lutheran against Tufts on the women's side and Messiah versus WashU on the women's side. And on the men's side, a little bit of a wonky Final Four, to be honest with you. Washington College versus St. Olaf and Amherst versus Washington and Lee. So not how I saw a lot of that playing out, to be completely honest with you. But congratulations to all those on soccer on how they're getting there, and we'll be busy with that next week. They don't play their Final Fours Thanksgiving weekend. They play them the final weekend. We'll talk more about that next Monday because I'll be there for the men's, well, for both of them, but calling the men's soccer championships once again. Thanks again to John Krikorian. We'll take another break. When we come back, we talk to the Hall of Famer. Dave Hixon joins us to chat all things that are himself and the Hall of Fame and Amherst and his coaching tree and all of that. It's a great conversation. Be sure to tune in. You listen to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com. Back with more after this. The National Association of Basketball Coaches is the nation's premier professional development and advocacy organization for basketball coaches at every level. The NABC strives to serve as the voice for coaches on national issues while advancing the core value of leadership, service, advocacy, education, and inclusion. To learn more about the NABC and to become a member, visit NABC.com and follow the NABC on social media at NABC 1927. That's NABC.com or NABC 1927 on social media.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's nearly 850 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over 2 decades. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're D3Hoops.com at www.D3Hoops.com.
It's on us to stop sexual assault.
In any way that we can.
To get a friend home safe.
To never blame the victim.
It's on us.
To stand up.
To make our community safe for all. It's on us.
It's on us to look out for each other at parties.
It's on us.
To be more than just a bystander.
To step up and say something.
It's on us, all of us.
To stop sexual assault. Learn how and take the pledge at itsonus.org.
Coach of the Year, Administrator, All-America Team, Wade Trophy. The WBCA doesn't just honor coaches, but players, administrators, and much more. The WBCA strives to honor those who have contributed to the advancement of
Well, folks, we're back on the air. Camera we've lost temporarily. Don't know what happened. Systems crashed there, and we don't have our camera back up and running. So you're not going to see my face here for a bit, and maybe for the rest of the show. It's not a big concern for us. We want to keep moving with the show. Not sure what happened there, but bear with us. Coming up, Dave Hixon joined us earlier today. Of course, Dave Hixon got enshrined in the Naismith Hall of Fame. Congratulations to him, to say the least. First Division III individual to get in on the merits of his Division III resume. There are certainly many others who deserve those accolades and have not gotten them. You could say this is a bit of a test case. We talk a little bit about it, but we got hints that maybe this was coming late last season. And Dave sits down with us to talk about the enshrinement. He talks a little bit about the start of the basketball season, which he keeps his eyes on quite a bit, keeps his ears to the grindstone as well. And we talk a little bit about his former program and his coaching tree. We talked to him earlier today. Now joining us on the Hoopsville hotline, the Hall of Famer, Dave Hixon, joins us. I mean, listen, we could probably call you Hall of Famer for a lot of reasons. But ultimate Naismith Hall of Famer was one that you and I talked about for years, probably wouldn't come true. It came true, sir. And you're in. You've got the jacket. I love that you wore it during the ceremony. You've got the ring. It's been a few months since it all happened. Are you still on cloud nine?
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily cloud nine. I'm certainly on that cloud too, but there's, I was just down there today, and it just, again, it's one of these things where you look around and it brings me back to our discussion years ago as to whether we would get anyone in or not, or when we would get someone in. And it's just such an awesome group of people. It's hard for me, forget the class that just went in, which was an awesome class. But when I think back to my heroes, Larry Bird and, Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, when you look at yourself in the same building as those guys and in, you're a Hall of Famer, just like they're a Hall of Famer. It's hard almost to fathom it. It's just, like I said, I was down there today and everybody's saying hi to me. Hey, coach, how are you? And, this and that. And, they all treat you so well, but you just look around and you think like, wow, this is just, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, I was going to say the other thing that comes with it is it's kind of like when you're knighted over in England or something. It automatically comes with Hall of Famer Dave Hixon. Here's the Hall of Famer Hixon. That is the preface for the rest of your life. That's a pretty cool thing to have to start. But it's such a nod not only to your career, but what Division III really is. It's, we're finally getting the recognition that we've all argued we've been deserving for years. But look at the class you also went in with. You went in with Greg Popovich and some of the tremendous basketball players and coaches, male and female. It felt like a breaking out year for the Hall of Fame. Like it needed this in terms of, for a lot of reasons, not only for yourself, but women and others. So you're part of a very unique and special class. Has that kind of sunk in as well?
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that, I never know quite what to say when people say to me like, hey, geez, wow, this and that. Right. And I always go, well, right place, right time, right resume. And I think that's the deal. I mean, I think they were looking to open it up a little bit this year. Jerry Colangelo said that openly, which gave me hope. But again, it was one of those distant hopes. And, right resume. I still don't know exactly what the committees are looking for. And we've talked about this before. Is it wins? Is it championships? Is it Final Fours? Is it the combination of three? I don't know what they look for. And, again, having gone through the process and spoken to people about the process, they don't even talk about it to each other. And so, it's one thing when you get past the North American Committee, which is 9 people, when they voted, you have to get 7 to 9 votes. They were Zooming. And so one person, a persuasive person, could make an argument and sway the group, correct? Or enough votes that you could get to 7, which 7 out of 9 is a pretty good percentage. But then it's 18 out of 24, and the 24 never get together. And so, matter of fact, they don't even know who each other are in most cases. A couple of them know who each other is, but for the most part, they don't even know. And so it's not like one guy is out promoting you or trying to get you in. And so it's interesting stuff. And so what are they looking at? Well, I just think the resume, and I don't know what is important on that resume, but it's a funny way to look at things. I look at it this way too, is that not just who's in, because that's remarkable, of course, because it's the Hall of Fame, who's not in, who's not in. And the problem with Halls of Fame is that, not everybody gets in. And I can tell you, I have a list of coaches who I think are the best coaches that I've coached against, and they won't get in. And they won't get in because they don't have the resume. They don't have the numbers. And yet they're some of the best coaches that I've ever coached against, year in, year out. Not 1 year, but year in, year out.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting.
I agree with you. And listen, I thought that was always going to be Division III's problem is, listen, full well, my dander got up, for lack of a better term, to go old school there, when there were guys like Huggins getting into the Hall of Fame with one national championship, half the wins, and you're like, well, this is a name recognition thing. This is a D1 thing. This isn't honoring those who are the best in college basketball necessarily. And I'm not trying to knock on Huggins, but geez, I could list you 50 guys who are gals who deserve this if Huggins deserves this. That was my point. If he deserves it, then I can name you a lot who also deserve it. And in Division III ranks, they include the Glenn Robinsons, the Steve Moores, the Bo Ryans. Because listen, we can all talk about what he's done in Division I, but geez, right, what he did in Division III was maybe more difficult than arguably it is more difficult than what he did in Division I. And there's women's coaches we could go down the list of in Division III. Does this, do you think, open that door? Not necessarily for a flood. I'm not expecting the dam to open and we get a flood of Division III nominees, but does this open the door maybe for those to get a more fair look?
I think so. I do think so. I think that I think I represented us well, and that was one of sort of my missions when I went to all the events that we had, was to make sure that the way I spoke, the way I conducted myself, getting out to meet people, talking to people about my situation, Division III, and that sort of stuff, that I represented Division III well. So, I certainly think the door is more open. How open is that? We'll have to wait and see. I mean, I think, I had a couple guys come up to me and shake my hand and said, "Hey, the happiest guy in America right now is Bo Ryan," because he's so happy that you got in, because now he's going to get in. He's got 3 championships, and is it 3? I think it's 3, and then he went to Division I, and so
more than that.
It could be 4, but I think it's 3. But anyway, it was 3 in a short period of time.
Yes, and
so that was sort of between 2 or 3 guys. That was a running joke that Bo would be next, but I don't know. Again, I would love to be on the inside to find out what criteria they're looking at. What are they looking at? And that would be a helpful sort of directional, if you would, for us to figure it out. Like I was looking over different resumes of Division III coaches, and there are a couple of the women I want to say, and I'm not coming up with a name right now, but I want to say Wash U, who may have like 5 championships.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And a lot of wins.
In a row, she won. They won they went 3 seasons undefeated.
Right. And so as I look at those, I think we'll find out if it's open. I think what's going to happen is we're going to find out, if not this year. I don't know what the class looks like this year yet. I heard sort of rumor and speculation it wasn't going to be like this class, as big or as star-studded, leaving me out, that is. But the rest of the stars, the 5 big stars. And, so is there room this year, or is it that it waits? I don't know. It's hard to say, Dave, but I do think that, again, one of my missions going down there was, and all the things that we did, was to represent us well and let people know who we were, right from the get-go, even on my speech when I said, hey, I'm not a household name. I'm not on the talk shows every night, but I do have a story. Now listen to me. Here's my story.
Yeah.
And that's a story that so many Division III guys can tell.
To go in reverse here, Nancy Faye's the coach we're talking about at WashU, who was a phenomenal. She went on to Illinois late in her career. It didn't work out great at Illinois, but it wasn't horrible. But she was a powerhouse of a coach at WashU. Everyone had to catch up to what they were doing. You had Mike Strong at Scranton. Certainly had kind of a Glenn Robinson-esque career in terms of racking up wins and accolades. Just maybe doesn't have the championship total to go with it, but still deserving. Was the winningest coach in Division III until another New England coach, our favorite, passed him just about a year or two ago. There's another coach. He's active now, but deserves to go in. And then go back further. Bo Ryan won 4 national championships.
Okay,
I'm sure by the time I've mentioned that, I've gotten a few notes on it. But yes, Bo Ryan won 4 national championships and got to a Final Four a 5th time in '92. They ended up losing the semifinals. They were 30-5 in the NCAA tournament under his tenure. That was no joke back in the day when there was a lot less diversity in the tournament. You were going to run into some behemoths in the Midwest just to get out to the championship weekend. So, yeah, I mean, I'd be fascinated to see where that all goes. Backing up a little bit, you talked about your speech, loved your speech. There were a couple of notes about the speech I got a kick out of. First off, hats off on your glowing review of your wife and your kids. I'm sure that allowed you back in the house. But more importantly, it just shows that it's a Hixon family thing. It's not a solo job there at all in Massachusetts.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I do think that, I'm so proud of what my kids have done because they've done it in their passions, and they've been able to follow their passion the whole way. And, a lot of that credit goes to their mom. And I've always said she's an outstanding coach. And, if she wasn't limited because of family or me, that, she would have been an Olympic diving coach because that's how good she is. And they still call her in. And until we officially go to Florida, which is very soon, and she may find work down there, but here at UMass or Amherst, the schools call and say, hey, would you come in and help us with this because we can't quite figure out how to get over the hump with a double twister or something like that, right? And she goes in and she loves it and she loves doing it all the time. And so she's a great coach.
I don't know. Your time's cleared. Maybe she can do that Olympic stuff now. I'm just a thought. Hey, backing up too. I don't know if it was part of his speech or not. It felt like an ad lib, but I did notice the camera was positioned appropriately to get your response. But Greg Popovich made a hell of a comment in the middle of his speech about the Hall of Famer here. I'm paraphrasing, but the Hall of Famer here really is you, not him. That was a heck of a moment, sir.
Yeah, it was a great moment. It was, I would have to say that, people that have talked about that night and about the speeches, they all come back to that one moment, really, where Popovich said that. And they were all sort of like, wow, that was like a moment. And it was cool. And, he started in Division III. He gets it. But, I found that all of those guys, for the most part, 90% of the time, they're so willing to give other people the credit. I mean, Pau Gasol and Tony Parker, particularly the European guys, were just so embracing of me, which was wonderful. I mean, I spent time with them. I was one of them, and it was amazing to me.
I would say, and this is not a knock on Dwayne Wade, it was maybe awesome up until he finished the night, and then I kind of tuned out a little bit. I lost interest at about that point. Thankfully, he was the last one.
My question with Dwayne is that when I went up and gave my speech, he was wearing white, a full white outfit.
Yes,
he was. I came back down, he was wearing it was red and then white. I'm sorry, it was red first and then white. And I want to know where he gets his wardrobe and how he changes so quickly. He must have worn 4 outfits that day. And so God bless him.
Yeah. Dirk was great. The whole event. Reveal a little bit behind the scenes, folks. I was working on a Why Isn't There a Division III Coach Hall of Fame segment last year. We were on the verge of blowing it and doing it, I should say, blowing it out of the gate. Dave was going to come on. We had other guests lined up. We had some media likes to talk about why isn't Division III getting any love. And I got an email. I'm not going to say from whom, but I got an email that gave me a hint that, you know what, something might be in the works here. And I slammed on the brakes on the entire thing. I pulled full stop because something told me, you know what? And no, I didn't have the news, but something told me if this individual isn't wanting to come on and talk about this, something tells me maybe we've got a chance. And I'm glad you got that opportunity, and welcome. It's going to take me a while to always address you as Hall of Famer Hixon, but I'll get there.
Well, you know, it's funny. It's funny because, you know, you get nominated. I had been nominated before, the year before. Steve Moore had been nominated 2 years. But that's sort of where we thought we were.
Right.
You know, and then all of a sudden,
but that's it.
Yeah. And then on February 18th, you know, they announced the finalists. I'm in the finals. And then all of a sudden I'm thinking like, okay, so the finals, that's great. That's like the first time anyone's been in the finals. And this is a long shot now. It's such a great class. And the strangest thing is that it was April 1st. So get that, April Fool's Day, that you had to take a call. They give them a half-hour window and be by your phone. You had to film the phone call. They wanted a reaction one way or the other. They didn't tell you what it was going to be. And they called up, and, you know, Jerry Colangelo delivered the message, and he just said, "Hey, Dave, Jerry Colangelo here." And I said, "Hi, Jerry." And he goes, "How are you?" And I said, "I'm good. How are you?" You know, pleasantries and stuff. And then he said, "I just want to let you know you're going to be enshrined into the Hall of Fame." And the first words out of my mouth were, "Jerry, could you repeat that?" Only because there's one 3-letter word that would have made a difference in there. You're not going to be in. And so on April Fool's Day of all times, you know,
yeah,
and so
weird timing.
And then the hardest part was for 5 or 6 days, we were sworn to secrecy so that it could be announced live. I'm sure that it got out a little bit, but they tried to keep us quarantined down in Houston. And so it was an adventure, but a fun one.
I'll say this publicly. I got to give Dave credit. I was one of those who was bugging him after I knew he had gotten the call, but before the announcement had come out, so I could prepare, because I knew I was going to be slammed with work. I wanted to be in a position that I could at least be ready to report if necessary. He did a fabulous job of not giving me any idea of which way to lean. I think politics might be your future, sir. That was well done. Right. Just want to give the committee all the assurances in the world. You were doing a fabulous job of keeping that to yourself as best you could.
Thank you.
Hey, let's pivot a little bit. By the way, quick note, I loved your ESPN interview as well. That was fun to watch.
Thank you.
After you've been announced. Pivot a little bit. I know as much as you've retired, you have not stopped watching basketball in Division III. I will get random texts from you about teams you're watching. I will get calls from you about teams you're watching and things you're keeping track of. So I'm dying to know, A, a little bit of how last year finished and what you thought of last season, and B, how you've seen this season start, because it has started with a bang.
Yeah, it really has. It's and I haven't spread my wings quite yet, because I'm trying to watch, sort of in quotes, my guys and NESCAC early. I've watched a couple out of region type teams of coaches who I've adopted over the last couple of years, who have called me up to ask me a question. So then I watch their games, and then I just, I sort of adopt them and watch them too. And I actually had 4 games going at once the other night, and it was it's
You're
hard
one of us.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And I was telling someone the other day, I've seen, Amherst, Williams, Middlebury, Colby, Bowdoin, Bates, Trinity. I haven't seen Con, I haven't seen Wesleyan or Tufts. Those are the 3. I saw a little bit of Tufts, but not enough to say I've seen them. But so 3 NESCAC teams, that's it, that I haven't seen. I've seen a lot of New England. I saw an absolutely great game the other night when I watched the whole game when Middlebury lost to St. Joe's up there. And, Middlebury's 0-4, right? And they are good. I'm telling you right now, like, they are a really good team. And I will not count them out of winning NESCAC. I won't. I mean, I just think that, Williams has got good talent. But Williams got spanked by WPI to start the season by like 17. And I haven't seen Tufts yet, but Tufts looks pretty good. I did see Trinity. I saw Trinity really beat up. We're going to talk about Aaron a little bit, and that was his second game. And I thought that'd be a tough game for him, just because this, they're 15 years along as opposed to 15 days sort of thing. And so it was just a little bit too much for him, but Trinity looks good. So I'm excited to watch it happen. And I think that, last year was exciting as always. It was great fun getting out and seeing everybody in Fort Wayne. First time I'd been there to coach the All-Star game. And, but it's, I'm always rooting for my NESCAC boys. I wish they'd, get a little further along. And, this year is going to be interesting because I think it's a really divided, from what I can tell so far, it's really a divided league. There's a stronger upper half. And I don't know if it's as strong as it's been, but there's a stronger upper half and then a not so strong lower half. And so it's going to be interesting as it goes.
Yeah, some talk already, and we'll talk more about it in future shows. I mean, the NESCAC may be a step back from where we're accustomed. Yes, the top's strong, but not as strong as we're used to. The bottom half isn't as competitive, maybe dating back to about 10 years ago when we kind of had that normal split between the upper and the bottom. But, we'll see how it all transitions. I think there's still some COVID effects in play. Kind of talking about that, though, your Amherst squad, your former team that you were in charge of, and that's kind of where I get to this COVID thought. They don't seem to have gotten their feet under them as much as I expected. I expected them to have taken a few steps by now in the right direction. It feels like they're a little bit stuck in neutral. Is that hard to watch from afar?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it's again, Marlon is his own guy and he's going to do his own thing. And so I'm hands off totally on that. But I do think that, I think we need to wait. I think by the end of this semester, we'll have a great sense of where they are. I think last year lingered a bit and, they had a tough year last year. They didn't make the NESCAC tournament, but it lingered a little bit. And so I think, the first game, they got sort of caught, I think, a little off guard a little bit. And they're still trying to figure out their rotations. Second game, they almost got caught again by a Vermont squad, but a really good coach, Paul Copo. And he's been around all over the place. And so he's a good coach. And he's got those kids, even though they weren't very tall, they were doing all sorts of great stuff. But then they figured it out. They won that game. If they'd lost that game, I would have some concerns. They're very talented. They have some really good players. There's 3 or 4 players on that team that I would love to have had on our teams and that can play. And so, they're still searching. They're playing 12, which is 2 or 3 less, 4 less than they were playing in their rotation last year. And, I was a 7, 8 sort of maximum 9 guy. And by the end of the year, it was more 8. But every coach is different and he's got to sort of figure out his rotations. And when he does, I think they've got talent. And we saw that last year. I mean, as much as they didn't make the NESCAC tournament, they beat Williams. They beat Wesleyan, 2 of the top teams in NESCAC. And so on their night, they were good. And so it's a matter of figuring out. And they got, so everybody complains about how weak their schedule was first semester. But, they're playing Westfield State. Now, Westfield State lost to Dartmouth the other night. But other than that, they beat 2 teams out of the NJAC. Okay.
Yeah.
And so
they're looking sneaky, aren't they?
Yeah, they're 4-1. Yeah, enough to be a measure, right? I'm watching Yeshiva, and Yeshiva was great a couple years ago. Okay, last year, but again, they know how to play the game. Their coach is a really good coach, and I'm watching their scores. I'm saying, like, that's not a giveaway either, right? And then they have Albertus, and I've seen Albertus play. I think Albertus is at Amherst. There's a huge difference between playing not at Albertus. I watched Aaron's team played at Albertus the other night. It was crazy. It was just, I don't know how referees referee down there. And I would say there were minutes that went by when they weren't refereeing, quite frankly. But and they're not a sleeper either. And so there's at least 3 games, and there might be a 4th or 5th. They don't play Brandeis and Babs anymore like we used to. But there's 3 good tests, I think, for Amherst in the first semester. And so, yeah, I'm going to wait till that end of that first semester to figure out if they've figured it out. And I hope they do. I mean, I've met the kids. They're good kids. They worked hard. They went to Morocco this summer as a group, which is usually a very good bonding exercise. And they have talent. So I'm looking forward to following it and seeing.
Yeah, no, it'll be interesting. I was kind of curious your take. I appreciate your perspective on it. I agree with you. I think, he's got the pieces there. If they can figure it out this year, they could be fun to kind of watch work their way through the NESCAC schedule. Speaking of your guys, you mentioned Aaron Toomey earlier. Obviously, you've got a incredible coaching tree, whether they played under you, coached under you, with you, or whatever it was. Aaron Toomey, I know, was your assistant when you retired, and I'll say it, I think there was a number of people, including maybe yourself, who thought, they'd like to see Aaron take over that program. I was one who didn't see that coming. I was honest with you about that. He kind of worked his way around, and he got the Hartford job, which I found interesting because that is a tough one to walk into, considering the, forgive my words, the detonation of a bomb that their former coach did to that program, which I don't think I could go a long time talking about what I thought he did. I thought it was rather selfish. Those players, those who stuck around into Division III, need some solid leadership. Here comes Aaron Toomey. Your thoughts on him getting that job, because it's an interesting one to get, and what do you think he's going to be able to do with it?
Well, I think he's going to do great things with it. First of all, it's a Division I facility. It really is. And when I first walked in and I saw the weight room and I saw the locker room and the arena that they play in, it's unbelievable. I mean, and they do it right. They do it like they did in Division I. Like after the game, he and two of the kids go into a press room, and they're doing Division I stuff. And so I think it's got that sort of glitz and glamour to it, that he's going to get good kids. They can get kids in there. He doesn't have to worry as much about the academics as he did. They have a graduate school. If they can get graduate transfer, which they did, they have an Amherst kid playing for him, one of my recruits, and he's a great player for him right now. The downside to it is, the alumni are interesting, and I hope the alumni can get, and he's good at this, but I hope the alumni can get behind him, because if they're gonna just hang on to being sour grapes about going from 1 to 3, and particularly if he has a mediocre year, which I would say he's bound to have, only because he was picking kids up on their way to school, I think, at the end of the summer. And I went to his tryouts, and, it was crazy. I mean, there was nobody there that really had a ton of experience. And so I tell you what, I went and watched his first game and he won it. And I was so happy for him, and his parents were there and the whole deal. And then I suspected they were not going to do as well against Trinity. And Trinity, was polished, and, it's not just a program, but, they've built something there. And so it's, kids not just with 3 years and 4 years experience playing for the same coach, but there's traditions behind that. And so it was going to be an uphill climb, plus the discipline, they execute, they're tough, they're physical, and they got whacked good. But I have to tell you, then they went down to Albertus, and I was so proud of them. They look like a real basketball team. They look like they middle of the pack NESCAC. And I thought, my gosh, that's good. And I think that's coaching. And I think he's got the kids. I know he went after his kids a bit when he thought they didn't compete as well as they should have at Trinity. And I was trying to salve the wound a little bit. And I said, hey, and he said, no, coach, I'm not going to hear that. We didn't compete. And so I know he's pretty tough on him. And when the kids responded the way they did to go down to Albertus, he's going to have success there. I tell you what, 2 to 3 years from now, I'll probably be in Florida already. So you'll be talking to me from Florida, but we'll be talking about him being a top team. Yeah, I honestly believe that. They're going to get pieces. He had 2 recruits come down to opening game. And by the end of that game, both of those kids, when they walked by me, I'd gone down and talked to them for them. And they walked by and they said, Coach, we're coming.
That's impressive to get that early. I agree with you about the alumni. If they can stop drinking the Kool-Aid from the former coach and, the woes a bee and, our feelings are hurt. Listen, that's the reality, and it's surprising more schools haven't done it. I know there's money in D1 and all that, but I'm still stunned that we don't see more of those coming backs, because that is a tough world to stay in for a school like U Hartford.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think that you're going to see a real split. It's getting smaller it's getting smaller as we speak. But I think that you're going to see a lot of these low ones that just can't survive and keep throwing that money into that program, trying to get a payback and not getting it. I think you're going to see us become a Division I, Division III world. And that'll take time to sort out, but I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, we'll see where it plays out, but congrats to Toomey. I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do there. Polly Thomason's a hell of a women's coach to have alongside there too, to bounce ideas off of. She's certainly experienced, so he's got a wealth of experience to back up on top of the experience that he already has in his back pocket, obviously being an assistant with you and the career that he had both in college and pro. And then, of course, a little bit of time there in Rochester.
Yeah, he was up there in Rochester too,
Yeah.
and Luke does a great job. And it's a different kettle of fish. You know, there's so many similarities, but so many differences between NESCAC and UAA. That's why I like the fact, you know, that Luke has tried to put together a UAA NESCAC challenge. And of course, when you know that NESCAC comes out and says, no, you can't call it that. We didn't give you permission to call.
You gotta be kidding me. Come on.
Yeah, come on. Yeah. So there you go. Anyway, always fighting
If
the
that
battle.
doesn't tell you enough. But I bite my tongue. Hey, Dave, always great to talk to you. We have talked to you far longer than I thought tonight, but I appreciate all the time you give us. Sure. Again, congratulations on something not only you deserve, but many people in this division deserve. I hope the door is now open for others. I get it. It's not going to be a flood, but I hope we at least get a few more who get to that honor and recognition for what they have done, especially in the division. Enjoy more of your time off. I know you and Charlie Brock hit the golf tees quite often. I don't care how you play, but I'm glad you're enjoying it. As always, we give the final word to the guest. I know you've been asked that a lot of times, so I don't know if you got any final thoughts left, but any you have to share with us before we sign off.
Well, it's along the same lines. It's a little different, only because I think with this thing happening to me and to us, I like to say to us because it's Division III. You know, you're the guy that's been fighting the fight for the longest. You know, we're all coaching our teams, but you're the guy that's made it a divisional product out there. And you know, this whole Hall of Fame thing, you're the guy that wanted to schedule the talk to try to get it over the edge. I mean, no one's fighting the fight or has fought the fight any harder than you fought the fight. And I give you so much credit for that.
Well, that's awfully kind of you. We didn't get that segment put together as I hoped, but that would have been a fun one to do. But, you know, the guys too, Pat and Gordon, the rest have done it. And we're glad that you get to go in. I'm sorry I couldn't be up there, by the way. I do want to apologize for that. That didn't work out, though. I'm glad Ryan could get there for it. I got to watch from home and enjoy it. In the meantime, have safe travels down to Florida. I feel horrible for you that you got to go to Florida in the off-season.
I'll still be watching, and I'll still be calling and texting.
Exactly. You are welcome. You've got the number. Do it whenever you need. Take care of yourself. Have a great Thanksgiving. Have a great holiday, and we'll look forward to talking to you.
You too, Dave. Thanks.
Dave Hixon joining us on the Hoopsville Hotline. Appreciate Coach being on the show. You are not looking at me. You're looking at some old pics of me because we can't get the camera up and running since the computer crashed. Unsure what happened, but just going to get through the show, and that's a lot easier than anything else, right? Better to not have some awkward situation instead. So there you go. That's we're going to go with this for now. But thanks to Dave for coming on the show. Really appreciate him taking the time to do that. And great conversation. Great insight, too. I think he's tap dancing a little bit with the Amherst question. I appreciate him answering it the best he could. I want to see Marlon Sears succeed. I think Dave does too. But let's see what happens this year. Maybe they can take the next evolutionary step and things can move forward there and things can get back to the way they're used to having things. I think women's basketball is going to be interesting to watch there this year as well. But yeah, appreciate Dave coming on as always. We'll certainly catch up with him down the road. Quick score updates from news and notes and score updates. So score updates from around Division III tonight, real quick if you're tuning in live, especially. Men's side, Carthage got the win over Anderson, pretty close actually, 94-87 in that one. Other games played, nothing jumping out at me. WPI got another win. They'll leapfrog into the top 25 next week, I have a feeling. But WPI always has a strong start to the season. It's always the finish we don't see. So I think that's going to be another topic of conversation this year. Can WPI live up to the start? Yeah, we'll see how it plays out. Utica got a win tonight over SUNY IT in the Battle of Uticas, or the Battle of a cross-town rival there. Hartwick and Skidmore played tonight. I didn't get the score update on that. Women's side of things, a couple of top 10 programs in action tonight. Scranton and Tufts, 6 and 7. They both got wins. Tufts got a win over Coast Guard, 53-38, and Scranton got the win over Albright, 86-43. So congratulations to them. Other scores, not a lot of women's scores tonight, actually. So kind of a quiet night. No other scores jumping out at me. Wells is going to have a rough season. They lost Oswego State 72-26. Wells is it's going to be a rough one there in upstate New York at Wells, I think, this season, unfortunately. Some other news and notes. I want to congratulate Bob McVane on his 600th win at RIT in his 40th season there. 43rd season overall, but 40th at RIT. He picked up his 600th most recently. And we were talking about DePaul earlier. Chris Huffman picked up her 700th win after that Transylvania game. So congratulations to those two. You talk about Hall of Fame type caliber coaches, and those two certainly have a pretty impressive resume themselves. So, but the likes of Nancy Fay and Glenn Robinson and Mike Strong and others certainly deserve more recognition and maybe some Hall of Fame love. They're not the only ones. Obviously Mike Strong is no longer the all-time winningest coach in Division III circles, but that doesn't mean that he certainly doesn't deserve the attention. But there's many of others who have done amazing work, and so I hope Dave Hixon's avenue opens up for everybody else. One bit of news I've been debating about reporting. There's been a lot of conference shuffling this offseason. I am curious. It's not going to end. What was interesting was we had heard about the Geneseo and Brockport. Was it Brockport? Oh, my Lord, I just drew a blank. How's that for sad? Deciding to join the Empire 8. We had heard that news, had held off on whether we were going to announce it. The conference ended up reporting that news. We ended up not breaking it. We had known it for months. There's more of that coming. And it's all coming down to cost. It's what I find fascinating is that conferences like the Empire 8 or Liberty, I'm just throwing Liberty in there, are welcoming public schools in when we've heard for years the conversation that it's not a balanced field, that publics and privates shouldn't, you had the CAC for a long time. There was an even mix of public and private. And we heard for a long time how when the CAC broke up, it was because of the publics and there wasn't a fair playing field for the privates, something that I have not endorsed. I have not been one who thought that. I also think when you move from a conference, it doesn't change the recruiting landscape whatsoever, other than how many times you might play those institutions. I still think you can lose a recruit to a public or vice versa. It doesn't matter if you're in the same conference. My point being, though, on the grander scale is now we're seeing some publics heading back to some traditionally private conferences or conferences with private institutions. So there's more moves afoot, for the lack of a better description. I am told from reliable sources that SUNY IT will be likely headed to the Empire 8 next year. They're pulling the trigger quickly. Now, the NAC appears to be losing members on their Western front. I don't think that's going to be the end of the world for them necessarily. We can certainly talk about that and others on future shows. I think that's going to be a topic of conversation throughout Division III, but especially with those locations. So we'll be diving into that here in early December. I'm not sure who will get on to talk about it all, but I think it's really interesting to talk about the dynamics of what's being changed. Conferences changing, private schools going into public, or publics again joining conferences that are primarily privates. Of course, the merge of the UEC and the CSAC, which surprisingly kept the UEC name, and front office. We talked a little bit about that. There's a lot there, and I think we'll dive into that in one of our December shows and talk about those dynamics and some other news from around Division III as well. So, but we're hearing SUNY IT is headed to the Empire 8 as soon as next academic year. Empire 8 continues to grow with more publics. And again, for the public schools, it's about less travel, as we talked with Julie Folks about the costs increasing for even buses for these institutions. So it's a topic I think that's going to be worth diving into sometime in December, and we'll work on a way of putting that together. In the meantime, that's going to wrap it up for us. I'm sure there's more we could talk about, but with a weird random crash there of the computer, we're going to sign off with that. It's also pretty late. If you're listening live and you're a podcast member, we're going to get the podcast turned around as soon as we can. There's going to be a slight delay on that. We apologize. Just due to the crash, we don't have all the archives in the right spot, but we'll get it figured out, but not worried about that. In the meantime, we'll be back on the air next Monday, the 27th of November at 7 o'clock. We already have Jenna Cosgrove and Caleb Kimgrove from Rhode Island and Hampden-Sydney, respectively, lined up for the show. We'll get some others on as well, and sooner or later we'll get our top 25 panels convened as well to talk about the top 25 and what's going on in Division III games-wise. We'll dive into that topic a bit more. By the way, did not say this at the beginning of the show because I ran out of time and I almost forgot here. Great Lakes Invitational had another bang-up success there. Ryan Winnable runs that show. It looked like a who's who of media decided to show up. Pat Coleman was there because he decided to get in some football in the area as well, so he took advantage. Ryan Scott was there. Bob Quillman made the trip up from Texas. And the Snyder brothers were there as well. That event always makes me want to bring back the Hoopsville Classic, though. Winnable has the financial ability to do it more than I do. But we'll see sometime in the future. Of course, we'll also talk in the future about the Las Vegas event, the D3Hoops.com Classic, back on our radars. That will be coming up as well. With that, we're going to take a break until next Monday. I want to thank all of our guests for coming on the show, of course. The three ladies, Megan Morgan and Natalie at NYU. And, of course, Meg Barber and Jeff Bernstein and Kai, for getting your last name, Kai. I apologize for your assistance in putting that segment together. Tremendous, really, really awesome. Great to go and kind of supplement the article that Ryan Scott wrote that was published today on D3Hoops.com about transfers in the UAA. I thought that was a neat segment to hear their perspective. Also want to thank Julie Folks for coming on the show. Of course, we'll thank John Krikorian because he was on last week, but we'll thank him formally this week since we didn't get a chance to do that on last week's show. And also thanks to Dave Hixon. And, of course, the sports information departments at Christopher Newport and Transylvania as well for their assistance with the segment. And with that, we're going to sign off. You all have a great Thanksgiving. There's going to be some fun basketball between now and then. I get to start up my 26th season at Goucher as PA announcer tomorrow night. Looking forward to that and seeing the new coaching staff there as well. But you enjoy the basketball. Enjoy your family and or friends, whoever you spend it with on Thanksgiving. And we'll see you back here on Monday the 27th for the next installment of Hoopsville. You're listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com. Thanks to the support of all those at D3 Hoops as well. And a thank to the NABC and WBCA, working with them to continue our partnership with this show as well. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. You take care of yourselves. You've been listening to Hoopsville. It is a copyrighted broadcast of DMAC Productions. Please contact us if you want to use any of the content. We appreciate your time. You all take care, and we'll see you next week. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.